Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, September 1st, 2022. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ruth Conniff, editor-in-chief of the Wisconsin Examiner, and author of Milked, How an American Crisis Brought Together Midwestern Dairy Farmers and Mexican Workers. Meanwhile, in a shocker, Sarah Palin has lost in Alaska's special election in its first ranked choice voting election to Democrat Mary Peltola, who will be the first Alaska native in Congress. The FDA has authorized the first redesign of the Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines targeting the new subvariants of the virus. They should be available as soon as next week. More polls are showing a surge in Biden's approval rating. Quinnipiac has his approval rating at its highest since September of last year. 40% to 52% disapproval compared to 31% to 60% in July. Jackson, Mississippi is still without safe drinking water, an overwhelmingly black city that's been neglected by the state for quite a while, and had a shoddy water system for decades because the state, you guessed it, outsourced its infrastructure to a private contractor, which ended up not doing the job, and then there was a lawsuit. So, reports indicate that the DOJ will probably wait until after the midterms to announce any charges against Trump. Does he announce his presidential run before that to subvert that? Could be. Trump lawyers are scrambling to cover their butts now that they might have to be witnesses into the probe into Trump's document hoarding. Did they know that their client withheld classified files in defiance of the initial subpoena? Peter Thiel and Mitch McConnell are playing hot potato with Blake Masters' Senate funding. No one wants to pay for this loser's campaign. Sad.
I feel like if he was your teacher's assistant, you should have to pay for his campaign. So Peter Thiel should pony up.
That's the rules. In Pakistan, the WHO is estimating that at least 3 million children are in need of humanitarian assistance due to devastating flooding that will likely spread waterborne disease and cause malnutrition. And lastly, an Israeli court has sentenced the Palestinian leader of a charity, Mohammed El Halabi, Gaza's director for World Vision International, to 12 years in prison. This is a part of them cracking down on NGOs as a way to just continue to subjugate the Palestinian people. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is the Majority Report Thursday. Very excited to be back with you. Let's get right into it here, because the midterms are nearing, and I'm quite amused by the story about Blake Masters. Washington Post had a story yesterday about how Peter Thiel and Mitch McConnell are playing hot potato with the funding for Blake Masters' Senate campaign. And no one seems to want to fund this guy. Here's a video for maybe why there's less enthusiasm from the Republican donor side of things to back somebody like this who, in my opinion, has some of the least charisma of any Republican Senate candidate this cycle.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot.
And let's just be clear about what this is. This is a guy who is seeing the money dry up, seeing his benefactors kind of give him the cold shoulder a little bit. He's had to run away from his original positions on abortion and the stolen election. So now he needs to get some people energized with a little bit of edgelordism.
And let's see him attempt that.
Well, this tweet made people mad. Newsweek wrote, "Oh, Blake said that women and minorities are hurting the economy." Fake news. Look, I don't care if every single employee at the Fed is a black lesbian, as long as they're hired for their competence, not because of what they look like or who they sleep with. News for Joe Biden. We are done with this affirmative action regime. I can't think of a single policy since the end of Jim Crow that's been worse or more divisive for race relations in this country. Race quotas are wrong. Gender quotas are wrong. They're unjust. They're illegal. But the Democrats are addicted to this kind of identity politics garbage. They just care about how you look, not whether you're the best quality.
It said identity politics garbage. I'd also say, like, if you're just like some Peter Thiel's teaching assistant from Stanford, you might not be the best expert on the worst policies for Black America since Jim Crow. I mean, I think redlining probably would put itself up there. But anyway, I think he means that, like, this is basically against white people. So
qualified or whether you can do the best job. If you want to see the affirmative action regime on display, just look at Biden's White House. Biden promised that he would choose a woman for his VP. Then, of course, he chose Kamala Harris. So incompetent, she can't even get a sentence out. But I've never spoken to anyone who can say with a straight face that.
Interesting. I mean, well, first of all, that's a bit of a dog whistle. But would you say that engaging in those kinds of politics is at least reminiscent of identity politics?
I mean, yeah. And first of all, he says garbage earlier in the clip. Like, this is not a masterful speaking performance.
Pun intended.
This is beneath the dignity of the Senate office. Honestly, like, this guy looks like a YouTube streamer that, like, is complaining he got a content moderation strike.
He's just like doing a poor job of imitating Charlie Kirk and Steven Crowder, and he's running for Senate against, like, this is not a galvanizing electoral strategy as a way to just, throw jabs at Kamala Harris's speaking ability. It's one thing if you're Trump and you have that cachet. It's another thing if you're somebody who can't even hold my attention as I'm doing a show, watching him, like, speak right there. He is not, he does not have any fundamental underpinning that's going to have him have success, essentially because he was propped up by a guy like Peter Thiel, as a way to, I don't know, serve those kinds of interests.
Yeah, he's a courtier, and Peter Thiel tried to give him a position.
And now he's abandoning him, which is the funniest part of this here. So this is from the Washington Post. After J.D. Vance won the Republican primary for Senate in Ohio, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell called Peter Thiel, the billionaire investor who had pumped $15 million into a super PAC backing Vance, to congratulate him, but also to make a request. Since McConnell's resources were limited, aka he's giving money to candidates he thinks are more likely to win, the senator said, would Thiel continue to finance Vance through the general election? Thiel demurred, according to a person familiar with the May exchange who, like others interviewed for this article, spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe private discussions. Essentially, the Washington Post writes, in the ensuing weeks, a high-stakes game of chicken would play out between McConnell and Thiel. This is over the past few months, culminating in the move last Friday by a super PAC linked to the minority leader, the Senate Leadership Fund, to abandon about $8 million worth of TV, radio, and digital ads originally booked to boost Masters. The move was preceded by a pair of phone calls last week in which Thiel spoke to McConnell and the Kentucky Republicans' top fundraising lieutenant, Stephen Law, who heads the Senate Leadership Fund. McConnell told Thiel over the phone last week that Vance's race in Ohio was proving more costly for the Senate Leadership Fund than anticipated.
Hilarious.
Another Peter Thiel
boy,
yeah. I was going to say apprentice, but boy is more apt. that money was not unlimited, and that there was a need for the billionaire to come in a big way in Arizona. As a person familiar with the conversations, described his words. Law, in a call with Thiel the day before his group cut back on the Arizona ads, expressed concern about Masters as a candidate and pessimism about his campaign's viability. Both Vance and Masters are friends and former business associates of Thiel's. Masters stepped down from roles and blah, blah, blah. But essentially, the article goes on to describe that, detail's too good for me to skip over. The message from McConnell and Law, according to people with knowledge of their pitch, was that they should essentially split the cost, with Thiel cutting a check to their super PAC, matching whatever funds they put behind Masters. Another option, these people said, was that the Thiel-funded super PAC could take over the ad reservations initially made by the McConnell-linked group. Thiel indicated to them that he was not interested in such arrangements.
No, thank you.
Postures say people around the venture capitalists that is informed by his approach of investing early and a belief that any more of his money would be used as a Democratic talking point. He is still hosting fundraisers for Masters in the coming weeks. He flooded the primary process with money. And now in the general election, he's leaving his guy hanging him out to dry because he doesn't believe in it.
That's so funny, his investment strategy of investing early in companies and then getting out. Like, you got lucky with some investments early on, but we have to start asking the question, if both Vance and Masters lose, we all have just reason to suspect like Peter Thiel of being basically a fascist or monarchist type of guy. Or is he a secret Democrat putting up these little little Silicon Valley boys to secure the Senate for the Democrats? And maybe that's what Greenwald was doing all along too, when he was retweeting Blake Masters and JD Vance campaign ads. Maybe he was just helping the Democrats. Long
undercover campaign, the two of them.
Thanks, guys.
It is just wonderful to watch McConnell and Peter Thiel, like two crappy divorced parents, fighting over, if they're going to have the custody of their kid for the weekend because they'd rather be out like partying or something like that. I'd rather be spending my money on my boat. That's the vibe I get. So yeah, Thiel can spend it all he wants, but he basically says, hey, you're on your own now, dude. I'm not helping you out, even though they're supposed to be immensely close. Both Vance and Masters are getting thrown under the bus by this guy.
And they are not independent of him at all. No more money is going to change anything. Everybody knows that the only career experience Blake Masters have is basically compiling Peter Thiel's duomonopoly lectures at Stanford into a book.
Yeah.
And that's all he's ever done. That's his entire thing. So like, it doesn't matter if you stop giving him money. Everyone knows he's just your teaching assistant and you're trying to make him a senator. Good luck with that. You should cough it up, Peter.
Yeah, and people already know that, and no amount of money being given to him in the general election would change that perception. No. It's just such a flimsy excuse.
That's all
but
people
the hilarious
know about
one.
Him. Yeah.
The other story I wanted to highlight at the top of the show was I mentioned the Sarah Palin loss in the special election. Now, this was Alaska's first ranked choice election, and it was a special election for Don Young's seat, who passed away. He held that office for nearly 50 years. It's Alaska's lone House seat. And now Alaska has joined Maine as the first two states to elect someone to Congress with ranked choice voting, which is interesting. I mean, Maine is experimental in this kind of way, but Alaska, some of these states with smaller populations, you see them making some of these gambles. And in this instance, it really did pay off. One, because Sarah Palin, who's a total clown, lost. But two, because the ranked choice system appears to have worked as intended. Most of the voters in Alaska use their first choice on one of the Republican candidates. There was another candidate named Nick Begich, and he was a lot of voters' second choices. But in terms of, if I'm getting this right, his first choice voters, a lot of them did not rank Sarah Palin as their second choice, which in the second round of voting allowed it to break in the way in favor of the Democratic candidate Peltola, who is a former state lawmaker and will be, I believe, the first Alaskan Native representative from Alaska, and she's a Democrat. Palin was already vulnerable because, according to polling in Alaska, 3 in 5 Alaskans have a negative view of her. And that's kind of amazing given the fact that her celebrity was so tied to her identity in Alaska. But like, she left the governor's office early. She decided to have a reality show, totally messy, totally incompetent. And it seems like despite the state being red, people understood that.
Yeah. I mean, there's in all these sort of Western states, I mean, North Dakota is a similar thing too. Like, there's a big distrust of like the big city media and that sort of stuff. And she just went to hang out in Fox News green rooms instead of doing her job.
And like, apparently with active COVID, eating in Upper East Side restaurants, despite claiming to be unvaccinated. She had her relationship with Alaska is half-assed. And it seems like voters understood that. But here are some clips. They're a little too small. I wish the reporter had kept filming for a little while.
Yeah, give us the raw footage, guys.
But you get a glimpse of Sarah Palin as she starts to understand that she's losing, and she begins to spiral, blaming ranked choice voting in general.
Ooh, rope lights.
Choice voting. Yeah. When it comes down to second and third place votes, that's going to decide who's going to win. I mean, really? Alaskans want Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi.
That's kind of just a little bit of it. And then here's a video of her as she realized that she's essentially lost, because I think that was as votes were coming in. She's cutting this cake, spirits, trying to keep them high. She's realizing that, I'm going to lose this election.
This cake isn't going to taste as good as you wanted it to.
Surprise, but knowing that the task in front of me is to explain to Alaskans why ranked choice voting is not in the public's best interest.
Oh!
Do Alaskans really want to?
So, I mean, she's ranting about ranked choice voting.
Ranked choice loser is
mad. Sorry, that was the system. Those were the rules. This is like when Hillary Clinton was saying, well, I won the popular vote, but lady, you didn't go to the states. Like, you didn't go to Michigan. You didn't go to Wisconsin. Those were the rules.
People think that would.
That's all right. You understood that this was the system. You had to win in the electoral college, not in the popular vote.
Also, this is just objectively a better system. I'm not one of these people who thinks like electoral reform, like getting rid of first past the post is the only thing politics needs, or even like the main thing we should emphasize. Because I think like the New York mayor race had a bad example of that going wrong, for instance. But it is objectively better than first past the post.
But look at New York 10. Say if we had ranked choice voting in that instance, one, the progressive should have consolidated behind Yulee New. But another point to be made is that, a lot of people would have made her second choice if they voted for Mondaire Jones or Carolina Rivera.
Right. Like strategically think about it. Like it's obviously not empirical, but you could not, I would never ever think that a number one Carolina Rivera voter or Mondaire Jones voter, or even Liz Holtzman and Joanne Simon were putting Daniel Goldman second.
Right. No, exactly.
I think he would have been out after his first choice votes, honestly.
Yeah.
The 50% of progressive candidates that got those votes of like 5 or 6 people.
Right. I mean, we need to, I think, again, it's not number one priority, as you say, Matt, but this should be a system that begins to be replicated throughout the country. In New York, the reason we had it for the mayor's race and not for the federal races is because it's only applying right now to citywide races.
It was via ballot measure for the city that we New Yorkers voted to,
But I want this more for federal elections, right?
And Sarah Palin should ask herself why so many people left her off their rankings. Like, that's a simple question.
That would be a little bit too introspective for me. But yeah, so it's a good result there. And there will be another election. This is a special election, but for the time being, this is a success. And
why did she run again?
Because what else is she gonna do?
Dried up, yeah.
Tom Cotton was already tweeting about how ranked choice voting is a way to steal elections. So that's going to be their new talking point about this. And then I saw some Axios guys saying that the ranked choice system it's so convoluted that it undercuts faith in the electoral process. So maybe we shouldn't do it altogether. Enough.
Oh yeah, bullshit.
Yeah, right. No, we create more democratic systems and infrastructure. And it's like saying we shouldn't. It was like that take that Andrew Yang had, that we shouldn't target Trump with an investigation because of what the blowback might be. No, you don't make systemic decisions or big decisions about law and about election structures based on potential blowback. That's the language of losers and weakness.
Yeah, make Election Day a national holiday and people are gonna have time to brush up on it.
Biden should do that, by the way. I think, it needs to go through Congress apparently. But hey, hold the vote. With that said, we have a message from our sponsor before we get to our next guest, and I think the audience might enjoy this ad read. Isn't it crazy that in 2022, stop laughing, Bradley, we still have high-speed internet, celebrities going to space, and electric cars, and yet people are still cleaning their bums the way our Victorian brothers and sisters did? With toilet paper? Come on. Step into the 21st century and upgrade your bathroom routine and start washing your bum with Hello Tushy bidets. Because smearing your business around with toilet paper is so 100 years ago. The Hello Tushy bidet attachment washes your bum with fresh water for a way better clean than toilet paper. Simply spray and pat dry. It attaches to your existing toilet. No electrician or plumber needed. It's very, very easy. It installs in less than 8 minutes and cuts down on your TP use by 80%, which saves you money and paper waste. I mean, think about how much money you spend on toilet paper every year. And then you'll quickly come to the conclusion that investing in the Hello Tushy bidet is probably more cost efficient, definitely more cost efficient. Hello Tushy has cleaned over 1 million happy bums. I want all of our listeners to have clean bums. That is my ultimate desire for you. Visit hellotushy.com. Tushy is spelled TUSHY.com/majority to get 10% off plus free shipping right now. That's hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off, and tag @HelloTushy on social media so they can celebrate your clean bum with you. That's hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will be joined by Ruth Conniff, editor-in-chief of the Wisconsin Examiner and author of Milked: How an American Crisis Brought Together Midwestern Dairy Farmers and Mexican Workers. Be right back. We are back, and we are joined now by Ruth Conniff, editor-in-chief of the Wisconsin Examiner and author of Milked: How an American Crisis Brought Together Midwestern Dairy Farmers and Mexican Workers. Ruth, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be with you.
Of course. So your book centers around reporting that you did both in Wisconsin and in Mexico, where you lived for a while. And it's on the role of immigrants in the dairy industry in the U.S. What was the genesis of this idea? How did you come to wanting to write about it?
Well, my family and I went to live in Mexico for a year right after Trump took office. We decided to take the kids there to get away from the United States, to have kind of a cultural immersion experience. And it was a great year. And just as we were leaving, I read a news article in Wisconsin about Mexican workers who were packing up and driving all the way back to Mexico from Wisconsin dairy farms where they had been working for decades. Things had gotten uglier politically. They were getting yelled at in the street. They felt uncomfortable. The parents were undocumented, and the children were afraid their parents would be snatched off the street. So there was a particular family that this article centered on, and it really captured my attention, partly because that was where I first learned that 80% of the labor on Wisconsin dairy farms is performed by undocumented immigrants, mostly from Mexico, which is a huge number, and I think not well understood. So I found this family when I was down in Mexico, found the same truck that they'd driven all the way back from Wisconsin on the street, and saw the house that they had built with the money they made milking cows, and became aware of this long-term relationship between people who lived in these little mountain towns in Veracruz, Mexico, and people in rural Wisconsin, the dairy farmers who really depend on their labor and have been working with them for many years, about 2 decades.
So what does some of that work look like in terms of hours and how difficult it is, and also just the relationship between some of these workers with their employer?
It's hard physical labor. People are working from 4 o'clock in the morning until 6, 7 at night. They're mucking out barns. They're cleaning up manure. They're attaching the milking equipment to cows' udders and milking the cows. And what's interesting is they started doing this a couple of decades ago because Wisconsin is the #1 state in the union for farm bankruptcies. And part of what has driven that is that there's this enormous pressure to get big or get out. And so little family farms have been going under at the rate of 1 or 2 a day, and the ones that have survived have had to grow very rapidly. So around the year 2000, in the late 90s, a lot of small family farmers who had never employed anybody but their own family members before began hiring workers. Couldn't find workers locally who wanted to do these long, grueling jobs, and found some Mexican workers who were working as seasonal employees on local Christmas tree farms. And that was the beginning of a relationship that has become absolutely essential to the dairy industry here.
So can you talk and expand a little bit more on the fact that all of these larger farms seem to be edging out smaller farms at this rapid rate in Wisconsin, and when that began, and honestly too, how farming subsidies from a federal level play into that consolidation?
Well, I mean, part of the problem is that there's been a shift over many years, accelerated by global trade agreements like NAFTA, to creating crops and milk as a commodity that's traded on the global market, instead of sort of local food systems where this food is sold locally and prices are sort of measurable, sustainable, they follow a regular cycle. Instead, you've got this tremendous global economy, this huge pressure on farmers to grow giant soybean crops, to grow corn. And under NAFTA, the United States dumped a lot of subsidized corn on Mexico. And that drove a lot of Mexican farmers off their land. And that created this rush of immigration across the border as people were looking for jobs after they lost their farms. What's interesting is that these two groups of rural people in the United States and Mexico are really under pressure from these same global economic forces. And they have that in common. And that's sort of contrary to the political narrative of rural voters in the Midwest voting for Donald Trump and, buying into a lot of the Republican anti-immigration rhetoric, which they do. A lot of the farmers in my book were Trump voters, but they really depend on and appreciate the undocumented workers who are coming to do these jobs. And they know that those workers are not replacing anybody, replacement theory having been popularized in part by our U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, the idea that these workers are coming and taking Americans' jobs. They could not find Americans to do these jobs. So I feel like getting at that relationship and understanding both on the sort of personal relationship level and the huge economic relationship level, what the reality is, it really kind of unravels that anti-immigrant narrative.
It's just amazing that I'm sure Ron Johnson and Republicans, lawmakers in Wisconsin, have an understanding that migrant workers are absolutely essential to these businesses remaining afloat, these farms. And yet it is his rhetoric on border hawkishness is up there with anybody.
Yeah, and Ron Johnson has been rushing down to the border, warning darkly about this, open border and these immigrants rushing across. And meanwhile, in his state, this major industry, dairy, we were the dairy state until California surpassed us in volume, but it's a huge deal in Wisconsin, is 80% dependent on these people's labor. So it's really contrary to reality. And one thing that really illustrates that, I think, is in our governor's race this year, the Republican candidate, Tim Michels, is a construction company executive. And when he was the head of the road builders lobby, that lobby group pushed really hard not to penalize employers for hiring undocumented immigrants. And the reason is they are heavily dependent on undocumented labor. Yeah. And yet he brags about building the prototype for Trump's border wall. And he has the same very harsh anti-immigrant rhetoric that a lot of Republicans have. And they know better.
So you mentioned that ironically, the struggle of Mexican farmers and what some of these Wisconsin dairy farms are undergoing is quite similar due to globalization and NAFTA. Can you talk a bit more about how many jobs Mexico lost after NAFTA and how that affected migration coming to the United States in search of jobs?
Well, about 900,000 Mexican farmers were driven off their land, subsistence farmers, directly after NAFTA and the dumping of cheap corn that was subsidized corn from the United States. So that is one number. I mean, there are many other statistics about that trade deal, but what that directly created was migration to Mexico City and other big cities in Mexico, and migration across the border, which has been a reality since, we created the Bracero program in this country to recognize that we were relying on Mexican workers to come seasonally and harvest crops in the United States. So it's not a new idea that Mexican workers come, work here for a while, send money home, and then go back. And in fact, remittances from the United States, Mexican workers' wages that they're sending back home, are the largest source of foreign income. It's about $50 billion. It's more than the income from petroleum in this petroleum country. So it's a long-standing economic reality. What has happened in this case in the dairy industry is that workers are staying to do year-round jobs, and there is no year-round visa for low-skilled work by immigrants in the United States. So that's why almost every worker on a dairy farm in the United States and any year-round agricultural worker is here without documents.
And NAFTA paired with increased border hawkishness also has resulted in an interruption of what used to be more circular migration, where workers would come across the border, make money, and then return. Can you talk about those two policy choices kind of creating these very specific set of conditions that make things really difficult for migrant workers in this country?
Yeah, it's ironic because the moral panic over immigrants coming to the United States, immigrants who, by the way, have a much lower rate of committing crimes than people who were born here. So that moral panic is it's very hyped up. It has created a militarized border, which makes it both dangerous and expensive to cross. And so when people come here, they don't go back and forth as much as they used to. The pattern now is for people to stay for a very long time, which is painful for families that are separated for years and years. And it creates this strange situation where we have U.S. industries that are absolutely reliant on these workers. The workers cross, in the trunk of a car, walking across the desert, take these dangerous crossings, pay about $11,000 to do it, work for most of a year to pay back that money that they borrow from relatives and friends, and then stay here for a decade or 2 decades, because once they go back, there's no guarantee they're ever coming to the United States again. And they're sending money home to these villages that I visited with a group of farmers from Wisconsin who go every year to see the families of their undocumented workers, where they are building roads, houses, businesses, supporting this whole community with money that they're sending home from the farms in the United States.
It just is jarring because it sounds counterintuitive to people because of so many decades of fear-mongering about the border. But the fact of the matter is that more heavily militarizing the border creates more I'm using this term just because that's what they would use, illegal immigration, in terms of just like, as opposed to a more fluid border system where it would be less treacherous, people would die less. I mean, people die, get maimed trying to cross the border, and also it would serve I mean, from the dairy farmers' perspective or from other farmers' perspectives, it would serve them better to in a sense.
Absolutely. I mean, it creates more illegal immigrants in the United States in two ways. One is people stay here longer who want to go back and would rather be going back to see their families and have the option to come across. But secondly, it just makes a system illegal that is economically a reality and has been for decades. And U.S. industries, not just agriculture, more than anybody agriculture, but also construction, food service, hospitality. They know it. They know that they're depending on these people, that they can't find Americans to do these jobs. And so just declaring that illegal instead of making it possible for people to do it legally creates a bunch of people who are, in their status is not legal, and that's not necessary.
And also, I would imagine, by the wages in and of itself, but also the conditions, it creates a bit of a treacherous situation from a work perspective for a lot of these workers who are getting paid way too little, working way too hard, and don't have recourse from the government. It's almost like they're invisible, but it's scary.
Yeah. I mean, people have no protection. They're really vulnerable, and they're vulnerable to wage theft and abuse. And there's some of that in my book. But what really most interested me was actually the very warm relationship between the farmers and the workers in my book, because they see themselves as having some real similarities. And the farmers, when they go back on these trips, they describe seeing scenes of neighbors helping neighbors to build homes and kind of all pitching in and doing this work as something like a scene from their own childhood in the 1960s in rural Wisconsin, where those farms are disappearing. You drive down the highway and you don't see cows from the road anymore. They're all indoors. There's a whole way of life that's fading very rapidly on both sides of the border. And here are these people who see themselves as having this agrarian background in common. And that I found really interesting.
So yeah, talk a bit about some of those stories of people that you spoke with, and your book is centered around, both in terms of your time in Mexico and your time in reporting in Wisconsin.
Well, my book opens with this 70-year-old farmer, Stan Linder, who drives down every year. He's been going on this trip since 2001, when the trip started because a local Spanish teacher at a small town high school in Alma, Wisconsin, she was translating on the farms, and she started taking the farmers down to try to learn Spanish in Mexico. And then they began going every year to visit the families of their workers because it made such a deep impression on them. So he drives down there every year. And when I went on the trip, we went into a restaurant in Veracruz, and these two women came running up to him and hugged him and brought him a bottle of tequila. And Stan and his granddaughter sat down and polished off this whole bottle of tequila between them. And these women were making fun of them, making fun of their Spanish, teasing them kind of gently, but it was a long-term relationship that they had. And the women, Luisa Tepole and Blanca Hernandez, had worked in Minnesota and Wisconsin for years and years milking cows, and now have started businesses in this town, welcome these farmers every year. I spoke on the cell phone from the school supply store that one of them set up, Luisa Tepole, with a farmer in Minnesota who had hired her. And he said, these people are just the salt of the earth, that I could not have done. I couldn't have done what I've done without them. I really needed her and her sister and the other people who came from that town to work here. And the farmers themselves kind of had this fascinating experience going to parties that were thrown for them in these towns and seeing more of a subsistence lifestyle. And like I said, sort of recognizing something from their own childhood that they felt nostalgic about there. So it's interesting. It's an interesting, close relationship. I think it shows how people are not just political labels, because these are rural Trump voters. They helped put Trump over the top in 2016, but they're not anti-immigrant. And there's a more complex relationship there.
And the complexity, I think, is also reflected in terms of just I'm focusing. I focus on the lower wages, right, and some of those the fact that these workers should be getting paid more. But part of the issue with it as well is that the farmers themselves are being squeezed out by these larger conglomerates. Can you talk about that dynamic and how that trickles down, affects both the smaller farms and the workers, despite the fact that there is like this small, almost family farming relationship between some of the workers and their employers?
Yeah, I mean, in Wisconsin, which is the #1 state in the United States for farm bankruptcies, one of the statistics that's sort of fascinating from the state agriculture department is that as we have lost about half of our family farms since 2007, the number of cows has stayed exactly the same. So those cows are no longer on 50 cow, 100 cow family farms. They're on 8,000 cow, 30,000 cow, giant operations. And that is a very different landscape. And it comes with a lot of environmental costs and food system costs, and I mean, where my book ends up going is talking about how do we restore a more livable, humane economy where people don't have to leave Mexico for 2 decades and leave their children behind to earn money up here in this very tenuous setup and wait for their life to begin as they keep sending home money, which is really hard on people. And how do farmers sustain themselves, and how do we have a food system that's not so vulnerable? Because during the pandemic, we saw how vulnerable our far-flung food system really is. So setting up working local economies, food economies, in both in Mexico and the United States is it's a goal of something called the food sovereignty movement, and people who would like to retain that smaller scale agricultural way of life.
In terms of maintaining that, what is the hope there, given the fact that it seems like some of these larger conglomerates have been unshackled, and when they have relationships with stores that are behemoths like Walmart or can't think of another example off the top of my head right now. I don't know, but stores like that, it's difficult to I guess breathe life back into some of these more sustainable systems.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some successful efforts. Organic Valley is one of them, based in Wisconsin, which is a nationwide food cooperative that's been very successful. It started with vegetables and is now mostly focused on dairy, helping.
It makes me feel good. That's my milk of choice. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, helping farmers make a reasonable income from selling their product. I think in organics, you've seen some of that. You've also seen Walmart get into the organic area, and that is causing the same kind of consolidation and price undercutting that happened in conventional food. But I think that is one answer, is that kind of cooperative movement. Another answer, of course, is to just have a legal year-round visa for workers, so that takes some of the pressure off the immigration aspect of it and the exploitation of people. And then another answer is just for consumers to be more aware that, paying really low prices for food has a really big cost in terms of environmental, the air we breathe, the water, particularly in Wisconsin, that's poisoned now by these CAFOs that are dumping manure into our water. And for people. So if you buy artisanal cheese from a small local producer, that's a really different economic model from going to, craft at the grocery store.
Right. And in terms of I want to actually quickly to return to some of the worker experience as well, because I am It is just I feel like most Americans don't fundamentally understand, one, what it's like in terms of being vulnerable to wage theft, not making so much money, doing all of this hard labor, but also the threat of deportation and having that all ripped out from under you. What in your reporting did you find was the employer's response to, say, their employees potentially, or how employers set up their worker systems to either prevent to prevent their employees from being deported, and what were some of the employees' fears about that happening to them?
Well, in Wisconsin, the state legislature took away driver's licenses from undocumented people in 2007. So since that time, a lot of workers have moved onto the farm because it's dangerous to drive. A lot of drivers, they're driving trucks anyway. They're going into town to get groceries. They get pulled over. Farmers are outraged. They go to court to bail out their employees, and they feel really angry that the local sheriffs are setting up traps to catch people who look Latino. So that's one effect. And that's one farmer response. There have been ICE raids in Wisconsin. There were many more of them during the Trump administration than there are now. But that has driven some people to just decide to leave, particularly people with U.S.-born children, like the family that I first went and saw in Mexico, who had 2 little boys who were born in Wisconsin. They started school in Mexico, and their classmates made fun of them for speaking Spanish with a Wisconsin accent. Their parents were from Mexico, but they were from here. And I talked to a young woman, a teenager, Jaziz, who grew up mostly in Wisconsin and has really fond memories and is back in Mexico, got stopped at the border and can't come back, and misses her dad. And that's caused a lot of heartache in her life. He's still here. She's down there. The fear of deportation is just hanging over people all the time. And there's a town in Wisconsin called Arcadia, where the largest furniture manufacturer in the world has its corporate headquarters, and they employ a lot of undocumented immigrants. There were major ICE raids in that area. And there was a successful lawsuit by an immigrant rights group called Voces de la Frontera that stopped that company from telling people they couldn't discuss their immigration status or their troubles with the employer with each other. And that was a major advance. And that town is becoming a mostly Hispanic town. I mean, it's been revitalized. There are a lot of Mexican stores, grocery stores, and restaurants on Main Street. The school would have closed because of low enrollment, because of rural depopulation, but it's instead thriving with about 80% Spanish-speaking students. So that's kind of fascinating too, as you see the transformation of these little towns because of this immigrant population. And in one generation, people are U.S. citizens, and they could end up being political leaders as well as business leaders, which is an interesting prospect. It doesn't take that long.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just returning in my mind to some of the insane outrage after some progressive lawmakers were calling to abolish ICE, as if ICE is this storied institution in the United States that wasn't created 20 years ago. And we obviously understand that its usefulness is, well, you could argue it was never useful, but certainly outlived it. And they've now become just a force to terrorize and break up families, as you say.
Yeah.
No, it's just upsetting. But you talked a bit about how low wage work, there's no eligibility for visas, which is really crazy because this would solve a lot of these problems. What is the reasoning behind that? Is it more just some of the rhetoric saying we want the best of the best coming into the country? We want doctors. You'll see that even on the Democratic side, that kind of rhetoric. What is the structure of the visa system that precludes that?
Well, it grows out of this World War II era Bracero program, which was a seasonal program. So agricultural workers are allowed to come to the United States and follow the crop harvest and go back. They can't stay for a full calendar year. There is no visa category that acknowledges that kind of work is going on. So it's just antiquated. And as far as immigration reform goes, it would be very easy to just create this category of visa. And I think the reason that it hasn't happened is that ever since comprehensive immigration reform fell apart in about 2014, blocked by Republicans, there was this moment when there was this bipartisan consensus. We have to fix our broken immigration system. We have to acknowledge the dependence of employers on these folks, and we need to do something better. But since all of the pieces of that were lined up and then fell apart, it's been very hard to get consensus back together on any individual piece. And part of the problem is that immigrant rights activists are afraid that if we get one little piece, then we will never get justice for DACA recipients. We will never get a path to citizenship. We'll just allow farmers to employ workers year-round milking their cows. So, I mean, that's part of it.
But hopefully, if there was more sunlight on this, then their wage theft would be lessened. There would hopefully be some less exploitative practices. That I feel like is one of the solutions that we could be achieved here. You know.
Yeah, and I also think that Republicans really need to lose some elections with this anti-immigrant rhetoric, because there are a lot of rural voters who are, in very slim margins in Wisconsin, putting Republicans over the top, and who don't agree with that rhetoric. And so I think really showing how hypocritical and wrong it is really important.
That brings me lastly to Ron Johnson. I would be remiss if I did not ask you to expand on some of the points you made about him earlier, particularly because this dude is in a tough re-election fight, tougher than I think some people anticipated. Mandela Barnes is a great candidate, but this guy, he said he was not going to run for a third term, and he's just doing it anyway. I can't get over that. I feel like that would be something easy to run on. He's a total liar. But what has been on the ground in Wisconsin some of the reaction that you've seen? Because he is a candidate, he's a Republican who could lose despite his anti-immigrant rhetoric, or maybe because of it in part.
He's a vulnerable incumbent, and that's very interesting. And he was really Trump's chief enabler in the U.S. Senate. So he's famous for saying all kinds of wacky things, like if you get a COVID shot, it might kill you, and beware. And the replacement theory, he denies promoting this white supremacist replacement theory, but he does use language that definitely pushes those buttons. He's always talking about the threat of illegal immigration. What's interesting in Wisconsin is that he's underwater. He's behind about 7 points in the polls. And in the latest poll, really interestingly, our very dynamic young African-American Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes is up by 14 points among independents, who are evenly divided between Republican-leaning and Democratic-leaning independents. So these are the types of people that I talked to from my book: farmers who voted for Barack Obama and Donald Trump, people who liked Bernie Sanders, and who voted for Trump because he was throwing a rock at a system that has not served them well. And so I think understanding that that's a real possibility in Wisconsin, that maverick candidates are often very popular here. Russ Feingold was a popular U.S. Senator, replaced by Ron Johnson. People see Ron Johnson's unforced errors as a sign of authenticity, and I think that sort of partly feeds into that. But independents prefer Mandela Barnes, and you really can have the same voters who vote for a aggressive right-winger like Johnson turn around and vote for a progressive candidate. So I think that the answer to Ron Johnson is not sort of a mealy-mouthed moderate who kind of tries to walk a line. You have farmers who are really angry about NAFTA, and they really like hearing from Barnes, who's quite progressive. So yeah, it's a tight race. It's an interesting race. And I think that Johnson is very vulnerable.
Has his role in January 6th been something that people have used against him, just anecdotally, or see that as a negative for him approaching the November election?
It's just hard because people are so siloed. So of course, Democrats are outraged that he tried to turn over the fake ballots for Trump after Wisconsin's electoral ballots for Biden were already submitted, and Mike Pence's office refused to accept them from Johnson. And he made comments that he was not the least bit worried about the January 6th insurrection, that the people who were storming the Capitol were good people. If they had been Black Lives Matter protesters, that would have worried him. I mean, he says awful stuff like that, but he's said so many ridiculous things and been reelected that I think the Democratic Party has decided they're running against him on the fact that he's out of touch with Wisconsinites. He says things like, we need to renegotiate Medicare and Social Security in the budget every year. We shouldn't guarantee those programs. I'm not sure why he thinks that's a winning thing to say. He's against unemployment insurance expansion. He's a libertarian. He thought that COVID was only going to kill 3 million people maybe, so there's no reason why we shouldn't reopen business. He just does this stuff that shows that he's completely out of touch with his constituents. So I think those are the things that are more likely to bring him down than the tinfoil hat conspiracy stuff, which he's famous for.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, I guess. Ruth Conniff, editor-in-chief of the Wisconsin Examiner. I've now almost said Washington Examiner 3 times here. Author of Milked, How an American Crisis Brought Together Midwestern Dairy Farmers and Mexican Workers. Thanks so much for your time today, Ruth. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, with that said, folks, we're going to wrap up the free part of this program. But first, Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Yeah, some fun stuff. There's a live show October 23rd at the Telegram Ballroom with This Is Revolution, Give Them Argument, and Left Reckoning. Also last night, we did chat with some Solidarity and Above patrons for Left Reckoning. It was really fun. We had a Zoom which a bunch of members joined, including Kowalski again from his tractor, and we saw the dried up Platte River, which is a horrifying sight.
Yeah.
And this weekend we're going to be talking to UGarls about Trump's legal jeopardy, and tomorrow I'll be releasing a conversation on the Lex stream, maybe tonight, I'm not sure, with Dr. Eric Osgood about COVID vaccines, the new vaccines, vaccine harms, and things like that. So you'll want to check that out.
Yes, you will. All right. Do we have Binder and not yet? All right, that's fine. They'll be joining us shortly. Check out Doomed. Check out Scam Economy, the wonderful twin shows that the illustrious Matt Binder is the proprietor of, and The Discourse, which is Brandon Sutton's show. We will be joined by them in the fun half, where we will be taking your calls and reading your IMs. 646-257-3920 is the phone number. Also, just a reminder, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, and chocolate. Use the coupon code majority and get 15% off, if I remember accurately. That's it. Okay, good. You can get some great coffee. I've been getting their cold brew beans for a little while now. And when I have that big purple or blue mug, that's what's in that. And that's when I'm really caffeinated. I'm pretty caffeinated today, though. So all over the place right now. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second. Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomiki.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry.
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports.
We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm going to go throw up.
Who libertarians? They're so stupid, though. Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes with satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks. folks.
It's just the weak being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
We are back, and we are joined by Brandon Sutton, Matt Binder. Binder's back from his vacation and birthday celebration. Welcome back.
Yes, I'm a vacation and a year older, and yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this.
I haven't seen. By the way, I'm glad to see you're feeling better, Emma, because I haven't seen you in like, 2 or 3 weeks. I feel like
something like that. Yeah, I survived COVID. I'm starting to feel semi-normal, although I went on like a long run yesterday, and my lungs are still just something's not fully right. But yeah, it's still. I'm doing all right. How was your vacation?
it was good. I went to Disney World, and it was a lot of fun. Sam gave me some tips and pointers before we left. I gave him a call. And we got on as many rides as we could, and it was an all-around good time.
Nice. And Brandon, hello. I already spoke to you last week, so it's old news.
I'm the only one who's been here for the past 3 weeks, besides I think also Matt, or was it Bradley, who was here 2 weeks ago. So I've seen everybody in some configuration for the past 3 weeks. So,
you are right.
It's lovely to be back.
The Cal Ripken.
Yeah, you were again big help that day that I filled in, and after doing the interview, we tried to figure out the phone call thing, and I somehow messed up my own settings, and Brandon had to take over for like a good 10-15 minutes, during that second half.
So how'd that go, by the way?
Poorly.
Other than the phone thing, I thought you did great, man.
Well, it's funny because people would think that I'm actually really good at monologuing, because sometimes I go on for a really long time, but actually talking to myself with no feedback makes me feel crazy. So I can't do it. It makes me feel really like, it's why I have a hard time with the idea of Twitch streaming, because I'm just like, I could never just talk.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a real skill. Like, I mean, the hours and hours that people go on like that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of between. I can sort of sometimes see the appeal, but it is based on like how much can you learn to love your own voice a little bit, and I think you got to kind of guard against that.
Damn, there's some episodes of Doomed where it's just me talking, so I guess I really love my voice.
You can learn to love it. It's like an acquired taste, I suppose. Not your voice, but one's own voice. It's an acquired taste.
Learn to love it. Speaking of all of that talking that you do, Matt Binder, what's happening on Doomed and Scam Economy?
So on Doomed on Tuesday, I had a TYT contributor on their Twitch stuff, Ravana, on the show, and she walked me through some of the big things that happened the week that I was gone, and we basically spent most of the time talking about Andrew Tate being banned from all social media, and she sort of walked me through his his little MLM grift. And then we talked about the reactions to the Biden student loan forgiveness announcement. A lot of Republicans who had lots of money in PPP loans forgiven, very upset that $10,000 of student loans were forgiven for struggling out of college workers and etc. And so that was on Tuesday. You can check that out at youtube.com/MattBinder and at doomedcast.com. And then tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time at the YouTube channel and at scameconomy.com as a podcast. Molly White of Web3 is going great will join me, and we are going to recap some of the crazier crypto stories from the summer that we have not yet talked about on Scam Economy. We got Martin Shkreli's own Web3 project, which someone has already cashed out for a cool $500,000 in the 3 weeks it existed. We got the Tornado Cash being put on the sanction list. We got a whole bunch of really interesting stories to discuss. That's tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time, youtube.com/MattBinder and scameconomy.com.
Awesome. And the discourse, Brandon, what's happening over there?
We're less structured on the discourse, as evidenced by how rarely I follow through on my promises. So I'll just say it'll be a surprise. Maybe you'll hear some of the same stuff you hear today. Maybe you won't. You know, it all depends. You gotta take this journey with us.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those mystery boxes, and those can be fun.
Yeah, loot boxes. They're banned in the Netherlands, but you know, here they're all right.
Like fireworks. We've cornered the market on those things. Let's take a quick call. I'm going to pick this. Here we go. 734. Area code 734. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Grayson from Michigan.
Grayson from Michigan. What's on your mind?
Nothing much. So I called before just talking about some crazy ladies at my high school, but I'm now in college. And so I was coming back from my brand new job, and I was driving through I don't go there, so I feel safe saying it, but Michigan State University. I was driving through, and they have this rock in the campus, and I saw TP USA on the rock. So I immediately knew what I must do is pull over and infiltrate the system. And so I pulled over and I went up and I was like, and then I saw Candace Owens like all over the sidewalk, like spray painted. And I was like, no way. Is Candace Owens coming here? And they were like, yes. And they were like, I just kept matching their energy. And then one way or another, I ended up on the email list. And then they were asking me if I wanted to open a chapter at my local community college that I go to. And they were asking to exchange contact information with me. So I guess I'm just calling to see, is there should I start a Turning Point USA
yes.
chapter? Should I do that?
You definitely should. And yeah, I would definitely go through with this and see how far you can take it.
I'm going to play devil's advocate and say exercise caution. You got to make sure you're the type of person who can resist that kind of outside indoctrination. I know it's going to be hard because Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens are very convincing in their, I want to say, propaganda. But, if you feel like the sway is too strong, don't be afraid to pull out.
On one of the earliest episodes of Doomed, like 40 years ago now, I spoke with the Kent State gun girl, Caitlin Bennett, before she was the Kent State gun girl, when she was just former Turning Point USA chapter president who had had a hand in the infamous Turning Point USA diaper protest. Do you remember they all dressed up as babies? What you should do is you should totally go through with this, get everything set up, get members, and then you need to think of the most purposefully over the top, ridiculous types of protests and just convince them it's a great idea. And you should do just see how far you can take it before they're like, hey, wait a minute, this is not, we're being made a fool of here. You should just keep going with as many ridiculous over the top protests as you can.
I would also advise reaching out to a kid. It goes by @7 spelled out _ 8 _ ass 7 Sirac. He was a former TPUSA representative who called into our show a while ago, and he might be able to give you some advice on how to go into this. But yeah, that's 7 _ 8 _ ass, and that's all spelled out.
7_8_ass. I will
Yes.
keep that noted.
Exactly.
There we go.
All right.
And Grayson, I gotta say, maybe call in when Sam's in too, because this is the kind of subterfuge that man lives for. So keep us updated, and I'll remember your name and your area code.
Yeah, well, Candace Owens is going to be coming here 8:13, and I got a QR code to sign up to go to her free Q&A. So I will be
You
going
mean
to that.
9?
What do you mean 9:13?
You guys know how that's going.
You mean
I think maybe it was 9.
Oh,
it was
8:13 is August.
Oh wait, no, yeah, it would be 9.
Yeah.
Oops,
Okay. Good.
Sorry.
We just wanted to make sure that it didn't pass you by yet.
I didn't miss a.
Yeah.
Also, when you say
event in my college experience.
Right.
When you say Candace Owens graffiti, can you give me a little bit more details about what was the Candace Owens graffiti? Was it just like her name spray painted? Like, what are we talking about?
Welcome to
here?
Candace.
It was literally her name in red paint, spray painted on the sidewalk with 9:13 next to it, and I was like, okay.
Oh my
I saw that,
God.
and I knew.
Like a biblical quote.
It's like the
Candace
coming of
9:13.
Christ. Like it's like when the
it
rapture is
literally
going to
is.
happen.
Yeah, and then all of the woke libs at Michigan State University will instantly be just destroyed with her facts and knowledge.
Oh yeah.
And free market capitalism.
It is.
They were also giving out stickers that said "Free Country, Free Market." I was like, yeah, you definitely support free market. Yep.
All right,
Definitely
Grayson,
a free
keep
country
us
guy.
updated, please.
I will.
You should wear an
Appreciate
Ayn
it.
Rand shirt. You should wear an Ayn Rand shirt to the event. It'll help you fit in.
All
I
right,
think
talk
that's
to
a
you
good
later.
idea.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks for the call.
Yep. Thanks
Bye.
for calling.
In fact, you should graffiti Ayn Rand on the floor the day of the event in all red paint.
Some people, this one person's been IMing with different Tim Pool lyrics, and I'm going to read Tim Pool lyricist. As your heart fell to pieces and to the world you're leaving, for there's only one thing I think you should know is that now you can rest in peace, dear. That's really his lyrics.
Did you not listen to the music video?
Oh, yes, we did.
I missed it when it first came out, and I was asked. I think Kowalski called in on Tuesday to Doomed and asked me about it, and I'd listened to like a little bit of it, and my biggest complaint was a tweet he put out like a couple days after, where he was talking about the success of the song. Like, whatever, okay, but he said how like people have his song successes makes it clear that people are still hungering for good emo music and not corporate mainstream drivel or whatever. And it's like and this is where I'm a stickler, and that is correctly connecting a song to the correct subgenre of music. He did not make an emo song.
It's like nu metal, right?
Radio rock. He made radio rock. If you like that style of music, that's great. It's on the radio all the time because it is the most corporatized type of rock music you could make, which makes his tweet even funnier. But the part that got me was he called it emo. It is not emo. It doesn't sound like emo musically. It doesn't sound like emo vocally. Please go listen to some real emo music like Texas is the Reason, Rites of Spring, Early Saves the Day, and get an idea of what real emo music is, please.
It sounds
So
like actually, it sounds like Daughtry. actually.
Yeah,
It sounds
yeah,
like
or
Daughtry.
Nickelback. That's what people were saying.
Yeah, so that's my thing. I actually like, and I forget the right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. It's either nu metal or post grunge is the correct subgenre, but it's
I think
basically
post-grunge, yeah.
Creed. Yeah, it's like Creed and bands that sound like Creed. So like
Well,
Nickelback,
the drummer
Theory,
is literally the guy from The Offspring.
yeah,
Have
Theory
you
of a
heard
Dead
The
Man.
Offspring's new single? It is exactly radio rock. Like they've left behind the skate punk thing years ago. It's really bad. Probably the worst Offspring song I've ever heard. Yes, worse than Pretty Fly for a White Guy. It is the worst Offspring song I've ever heard because their music sounds a bit different now. They're not a punk band anymore.
I don't know what song you heard by him. I heard the one that was kind of an animated music video, but to me, I just heard like if you mixed Creed with Rise Against, that's kind of what it was giving me, that kind of vibe. Like if people who listen to Rise Against, I wouldn't say they're like a really great band.
I
No
thought
offense, like,
Dashboard Confessional.
Well, so
but-
that's the thing is there's two different songs we're talking about. This, Brandon, you're talking about the 2020 release, which we have available here too, which we can enjoy. But I didn't know that Tim Cast had released music before. I thought this recent song was his first one. So this one escaped my attention. But this is, what is it called? Will of the People, yeah. So
yeah, that was it. That's also why I sound like Rise Against. I was like, that's a very like Rise Against-y type of like.
All right, let's
but it's
play
also
it.
like written from the standpoint of what seems like to be the fascists, which I was like, I don't
You know
understand.
what? No, yes, that's the first thing I realized too. Yes, but it actually sounds more like that Muse song, like that Revolution, whatever it was called.
Yeah.
It sounds just like that song.
This sounds-
I'm a
this
fan
is
of
very
earlier
Muse-y.
Rise Against stuff, so I took offense to you comparing it to Rise Against.
But like
Don't-
not
don't
totally
put on
Rise
Muse.
Against, just like it's like Creed. Like
Yeah,
Creed
I like
mixed with Rise
Muse.
Against.
I'm,
like
I'm
Creed.
definitely the most musical noob of all of us here, but is Muse bad?
I mean, they got bad. Some people say they were always bad. I think their first 3 to 4 albums are defensible.
I saw them open for U2 when I was like 13.
They're great
and they were
live.
awesome.
They're
Yeah.
amazing.
I've
live.
heard that. All right, let's play a little bit of this. Enough that we don't get striked, right?
Nah. Just play it all.
Struck.
Maybe just skip to like. This is already a better song than the one we just.
Oh yeah, it's definitely better than the new one.
Yeah, I thought it was perfectly passable until you realize, like, again, it's from the standpoint of like the oppressors.
He has that issue of being one of those people whose his singing voice is exactly how he sounds when he's talking. So once you get past that,
He does have like the nasalness is consistent.
Yeah.
I think the
Not a
song
good
is
one.
fine, but like I said, I like Creed, so I can't say it's good, but I think it's something that I would listen to.
No, this is bad, Brandon.
It's a song.
it's definitely. I think when you hear the newer one, you realize this one in retrospect is better. That's how I think you could frame it.
People are like shitting on it because it's Tim Pool.
This one's
but I
definitely
think
catchier.
Yeah, this one's kind of
I can say it's like, it's all right. Like the words aren't really. It's like a Eurovision song where it's more about the melody, kind of like just the feeling that you get with the song. Like it's like it just people are mad because it's Tim Pool, and I'm mad because his band is not called Tim Pool and the Hats, which I thought was like an obvious choice to make. But I think that if it wasn't Tim Pool, people wouldn't be banging this out there, in the trunk in the summer. But certainly, if he was like at your local bar playing it, like, oh, that guy plays songs. Like he plays things that sound like music.
The thing about it though is like from even I'm not like that. I don't know music that well, but I feel like I have an understanding of what lyrics should be like if they are passable and not terrible. And in each of these songs, the lyrics are freaking awful. They're awful.
I haven't heard the lyrics. I haven't really honestly that new song he put out. I was listening to it. I was like, oh, here we go. Any second now, it's gonna pick up. Right. This is the slow part's just gonna be the opening. It's 3 minutes of the slow. I don't know what
he thinks he's building up.
Yeah.
He thinks he's like Phil Collins, getting to the drop at 3/4 of the way in.
Yeah, but Phil Collins wrote the Disney's Tarzan music, so that stuff's good.
That he did. That slaps.
The chorus to Will of the People is really fascist. Also, by the way, Muse does have a song literally called Will of the People as well. I wish I could spare them, make them see the path. Tempting as that sounds, I'll have to pass. That's just an embarrassing, like, no foot soldier is saying, tempting as that sounds, I'll have to pass. Like, I just, I know what's needed for the good of my people to save them. Yeah, it does sound very fascist.
Yeah, this is his dictator fantasy?
Yeah, or like he's a foot soldier.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Probably don't need any more of that.
I will say this too. I mentioned this. It was when Kowalski asked me because I dabbled in this world a long time ago, but I've continued to be interested in how this whole world works. It does not credit to him. He hit the Apple iTunes rankings with this song. That's nothing to scoff at, but it should also be said that it takes a lot less sales nowadays to accomplish that because the vast majority of people consume music via streaming platforms. I remember reading something like, depending on what the other releases are and what time of the year it is, you can easily hit like the iTunes sales charts with just like, a couple thousand, maybe 10,000 sales of a song, which again, it's nothing to scoff at, but still not the music numbers people think of when they used to think, oh, a top ranking selling song. It's not the same industry anymore when it comes to sales. If let me know when it's on the streaming charts, and then I'll be really wow.
He'll be at the VMAs next year. I don't know. People like what they like. You can't predict success.
All right, let's read some IMs, and then we'll get to some of the clips we had planned. But that was a nice, little
palate cleanser.
Right, exactly.
You know what? I think I'm gonna have to come out of retirement and show people how a real emo song is done.
Oh yeah.
We probably have vastly different music tastes on this show, so.
ACU Punk for Life says cute stories about the genteel farmer bosses in Wisconsin. Yeah, guys, I agree with. I see another IM kind of criticizing some of that. I tried to steer the interview away from that because I thought there were a lot of other good nuggets in that interview. I wasn't like super down with some of that framing, but I still think that it was interesting guests who had a lot of good knowledge. Kowalski from Nebraska, a Majority Report Thursday. Great interview today. Wisconsin and Minnesota have such legendary history with agricultural co-ops, and it is sad to see these areas decline as they have because they were once the progressive leaders in the whole world. Have a good day, leftist poggers. Yeah, I was waiting for your IM on this interview, Kowalski. Bullprog says, sounds like REM. Yeah. REM's bad, right? I don't like REM.
No, REM's good.
Oh, okay.
No, REM's good, yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why
You can think they're bad. I
shouldn't offer takes when I don't know what I'm talking about. Fruity Dinosaur, Tim Pool and the Hi-Hats would be a perfect band name.
So there are so many ideas for either hat-based or pool-based puns that the fact that the band is still called Timcast, I thought it was Only Ever Wanted. That's like the song's name.
Yeah.
Like a sort of like a bonsai predicament situation with that one. But you just got to get something better than that. Like The Deep End, another good one.
Cap No Fun says, musician and lyricist here can confirm you don't need to be one to know Tim Pool doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Stone Ocean, tempting as that Tim Pool song says, I'll have to pass. But how funny is it to screw with Toilet Paper USA? But we forget that sometimes people are able to come into conservative spaces and get people to see what leftists have to say and how much more honest we are. And Brandon, please watch Stone Ocean. I'd love your opinions on it. And Majority Report for Life.
Stone Ocean is something. Stone Ocean is the 5th season of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures.
All
with
right.
Jotaro's daughter, Jolene. She gets unjustly imprisoned in a prison and has to, do some stand-style mysteries. So I will be watching that soon. I'm rewatching the whole series now. I'm up to like the 4th season.
What about Tim Pool and the Beanie Men?
That's pretty good.
Or just the Beanie Men in particular.
Wait, isn't there a reggae star named Beanie Man?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's kind of where I got it from.
Yeah.
But another ripoff for him, though. Then.
Also, correction. It's the 6th season of JoJo's. I don't want people to DM me about that later.
That would be bad. That would be bad, Brandon. So glad you corrected that for posterity.
To Brandon.
Yes.
I forgot the Italian one. I'm sorry.
The Italiophobia never ceases from Brandon.
Not when I'm around.
Cancel him. Speaking of Turning Point USA, let's do this Charlie Kirk thing. So Charlie Kirk has a theory about the documents that were taken from Mar-a-Lago, the classified documents that Donald Trump was hoarding. And there was a picture that was released, I believe, by the New York Times of how these documents were being stored. There were some fun details in that, including Trump having a Time magazine cover that was framed in one of the boxes that he took from the White House. But Charlie Kirk, I would say he's lost it, but I just don't necessarily know if he ever had it. This is his theory about why the Time magazine cover was photographed alongside the classified documents
of the Department of Justice that just released a filing of a picture of documents from Mar-a-Lago seemingly just kind of spread all across the floor. And if you look a level deeper into this photo, let's put the photo up on screen. It is very clear that our prediction on Monday is becoming true. This is the Department of Justice sending a clear and obvious and intentional message towards Donald Trump and his allies and towards you, that the fourth branch of government is not going to take it anymore, that the fourth branch of government, the unelected, unknown, unchecked power apparatus is going for it. They know they're unpopular. They know they do not have a constituency. They want to be the few ruling the many. They want to destroy the idea of the many ruling the few. What is it in this picture exactly? Well, the administrative state posts this picture of documents all across the floor. Nothing necessarily telling there, but there's two big things, and we have to get to that deeper today. The first of which is an intentional placement of a Time magazine cover. Now, look, they knew that this was going to go viral. They knew that this was going to be examined through every single way. Put a picture of the Time magazine cover up on screen. Picture of Donald Trump with all the Democrat candidates looking outside of the window, and it says, knock, knock. This is back from March of 2019. Get it? Knock, knock. Like we're knocking on your door on home. No mistake that was put in. Now, this is not for the purpose of the judge. This is simply and solely for a public relations move. This was designed with the sole intent to try to chill dissent. It's so smug. It's so arrogant. The FBI no longer even tries to hide their political bias. And I'm going to say this again. They're going for it. They're going for an indictment of Donald Trump. I wish that was not the case. I wish that it was kind of like the Mueller investigation. I wish it was like all these other ones. Instead, I think they're going to create a crime out of thin air because they are so afraid of what 2024 is going to hold and what the midterms will hold.
Knock, knock.
I love the reaction of top secret documents laid out all over the floor and Charlie Kirk going, nothing to see here. Look over in that box at that Time magazine cover.
No, because he's running with and I thought most Republicans had abandoned this for a little while, but it was funny to see them try to scramble to come up with a talking point after this raid happened. But he's still on the planted evidence thing. See, they're sending a message. Knock, knock. We're coming for you. Man, he even has to know that is flimsy. He desperately wishes that it was a different Time magazine cover because I'm not seeing the connection. Even if I, smoked a lot of pot, I don't know if I'd be able to make those.
But even in the picture, you can't even really see it.
I know. That's by design, Bradley.
You're right.
Because you have to look for it.
Yeah, he had to blow it up. He had to get his producer. He had to pull a me and blow up the shot.
Yeah, connect some strings on the dartboard there, or in the bulletin board.
We all know that throughout history, America's law enforcement and intelligence agencies have loved to spread secret messages to stifle dissent via Time magazine covers. It's gone on. Martin Luther King Jr. was sent Time magazine covers. Coups in Latin America were started over Time magazine covers sent by the U.S. This is how we roll.
You joke, Matt, but that's because you don't know the long history of hidden object indoctrination in media. That's why Highlights magazines is the preeminent tool of the deep state when it comes to indoctrinating the populace.
Shit, I used all those growing up. Is that why I'm so on board with the deep state and in their investigation of Donald Trump?
I read those at the dentist's office, and now I'm so woke.
I bet you think it's just about finding Waldo, don't you? Exactly. Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. I've been searching for Waldo my whole fucking life, man.
They're not even hiding anymore. They're not even hiding their intentions. They're exposing them subliminally in the corner of an evidence photo that you have to decode.
Enhance.
The funny thing is that like they like not they as in the deep state, but like they as in like Republicans and Democrats do this more now, like the I spyification of our like political media stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just remember back when Elizabeth Warren like spelled out BLM in like children's blocks in the back of like a
Yes.
a Democratic convention thing, and it's just like that stuff is just done to appeal to like the childish minds of the like the mainstream voter. What I don't think that the FBI is doing that in this particular circumstance. I think Trump just has any Times magazine that has him on the cover, no matter whether it was negative or positive.
Absolutely,
framed. I think that a more likely thing that they could have done was to just like cover the top secret documents and like ketchup fingerprints, because that would be a way to like subtly imply like the malfeasance of Donald Trump, that he wasn't keeping the documents in any real good sense. You sprinkle a few like McDonald's like double cheeseburger wrappers around, like put like ketchup fingerprints on everything. That's what I would do if I were an FBI.
Also, where does Charlie Kirk think like the FBI grabbed their own Time magazines? Like it's clearly a box of Donald Trump's own Time magazine.
Yeah, like the only like way that's possible is if like some like cad in the raid, which I don't believe this happened, but like noticed that Trump had that magazine and thought it might be funny to put it in the evidence photo. But it existed at Trump's office. It wasn't like some nefarious plan, like we're gonna send a message here. Like,
do we know it was in Trump's office, even though he has an entire history of, by the way, like framing Time magazines in particular, photoshopping non-real ones and hanging them in his golf course, if you guys remember that story.
He knows every media appearance he's ever made.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of an FBI agent showing up and getting ready to take the photo and going, wait, get me Time magazine issue 2195.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this ever since this came out, to plant it at the scene of where we finally get the guy.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say: if that was like a subliminal message put into the frame by an FBI like psyop like engineer, they should be fired, because I didn't put those things. I didn't connect those things when I first saw the picture. I still don't really understand what Charlie Kirk's point after having like the intention explained to me. So I have a hard time believing it would affect me in the way that he describes. But I could be wrong. I just think that it wouldn't be an effective subliminal message, even if it was one.
No, you're right,
also,
Brandon.
Are we sure that was a real Time magazine cover? Because didn't Trump once hang up a fake Photoshop one?
Yeah, that's what I just was alluding to.
Oh, that's what.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not doing good with subtle these days.
It's all good. It's all good.
But Brandon, you're exactly right about the point about the appealing to basically child minds. Like, and that's what Charlie Kirk is doing here. And this is what sort of all of QAnon is, which is like, you don't need to understand like, the history of and like sort of policy implications of certain things. You just need to look for the hidden symbolism that can be decoded for you, and then you have the decoder ring, and you're all of a sudden empowered.
Right.
And that's like,
because you're the ones doing it, right? It's not you're consuming information and learning. You're active in your own like uncovering of certain knowledge, so it feeds into people's individual narcissism, for lack of
exactly. Yeah. And it is just lowest common denominator type of stuff. You just search for any sort of thing you can make into like imbue with deeper meaning, because the actual deeper meaning of like, what does it mean that a president is taking documents that like relate to like espionage and nuclear stuff? Well, let's not get into that. Let's just get into the secret messages that the deep state's sending you.
All right, folks, let's do another call, shall we? That was fun, though.
We also got to do the Ben Shapiro clip later.
Yes. Calling from a 719 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, this is Andrew from the Denver Metro.
Sorry, can you say it again?
Andrew from the Denver Metro. If you can't hear me, okay, I can.
Yeah. Andrew from the Denver Metro. Got it.
Yeah, I just wanted to call and talk a little bit about the interview. Sure. I grew up in the cheese curd capital of Wisconsin, which is rural Wisconsin, and kind of had two comments. The first one being that looking forward to seeing racist bigot Ron Johnson losing, because neoliberalism has created a situation in which small farms have been gobbled up by large farms and are reliant on low labor.
I mean, knock on wood, dude.
But the second thing is, I kind of saw this growing up. My grandfather and my family has kind of been farming in the same 20-mile radius for I think 5 generations now. And my grandfather ended dairy farming when I was pretty young. I think it was before I was 5 or something like that, because it was difficult to keep up, wasn't paying as much. And I don't think my community was as affected as much, because we have being the cheese curd capital of Wisconsin, we have a cooperative creamery that's been in the area for over 100 years that kind of helped stave off kind of the consolidation of farms in the area, but definitely created a situation at which only larger farms were able to survive. And it's definitely been frustrating to see my home state. I mean, I left in 2013 after I graduated high school, but see my home state just kind of falling from what it used to be, being like the home of sewer socialism and all that. It's been kind of sad. And I think really the only positive thing to take away from the interview was some farmers in rural areas having their kind of racist attitudes solved by having a direct interaction with immigrants, but that doesn't by any means solve the issue of exploiting immigrants for cheap labor.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't some of the silver linings she was describing were, some personal relationships, right? But from a systemic perspective, it is hard to not feel a little discouraged, to say the least.
But that's all I had. Thanks for taking my call.
Right.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Andrew. Bye.
I want to get to this Ben Shapiro clip so we make sure we got it.
Sure. So we
I don't
forget.
even know what it is. It's just like you guys seem so enthusiastic.
Well, I mean, I watched it. It's just, I'm not sure, like, even what the hell he's talking about. But let's see here. So, Ben Shapiro, I hadn't even remembered the story, but a space launch was essentially delayed. Is that the crux of this?
So there was supposed to be an Artemis 1 space shuttle test. We got close to the moon, but the goal, I think, is to get it to Mars. But the shuttle test was delayed because there was an issue with the engine coolant, so they had to delay it till Saturday. But Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff were on scene to watch the launch, and Shapiro was reacting to a statement that she made, saying that she's hoping for more, diverse ranks in astronauts.
Oh, so like the most pressing story imaginable. Yes. The a space launch was temporarily delayed, and the vice president made a comment about diversity.
Yeah, about wokeness.
As opposed to
I do want to add that it's
thought. Let me just say this joke real quick. As opposed to the diversity of thought in NASA, which is like having Nazis like Werner von Braun lead the institution. Like, I think diversity inclusion stuff is probably needed at NASA. I think they probably have a pretty bad culture.
Yeah.
All right, so Ben Shapiro has gripping commentary on this.
The equity agenda, by the way, was promised. I mean, Joe Biden promised that this is going to infuse every area of his administration, down to the stupidest parts of it. So this week, Artemis 1, which is supposed to be setting the stage for the attempt to reach the moon again. The Artemis 1 launch was canceled. Again, right, scrubbed after an engine issue. According to CNN, the launch of NASA's historic Artemis 1 moon mission has been postponed after the team was unable to work through an issue with one of the rocket's 4 engines. Okay, but the really important thing is that when we do go to the moon, we have a lesbian on the moon. Lesbians on the moon. This is what we need. It sounds like a bad pornography. Anyway, here is Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, explaining that the key to space exploration is that we send up a diverse group of people to space. I don't know why that's the key to space exploration. I thought it would be, the most qualified people that we ought to send to space.
God.
We shouldn't actually, again, it's like they are just casting a movie. They're just casting a movie in their own minds.
This idea... So a couple things. There's been lesbians in space. Sally Ride famously, although she was closeted during her life because people like Ben Shapiro had their way. But yeah, she was a lesbian. Had a longtime partner of like almost 30 years. And this fetishization of the most qualified, as if like these are perfect meritocracies, is just ludicrous. Like, I think the idea that you can't find qualified people elsewhere, but like, I don't know, it needs to be some sort of like, kid that grew up on like a Iowa dairy farm or whatever we like theorize astronauts needing to be. Like it's just silly.
Well, I mean, it's childish too. This again, I return always to this guy being the facts over feelings guy, but the underpinning of so many of his arguments, which are really just emotional outbursts, is this religious belief in our systems as being perfect, and often that goes hand in hand with deifying the will of the founding fathers, and treating them like they're patron saints. And it also is this nonsensical emotional belief in a meritocracy that doesn't exist by every definition of the word.
Yeah. Also, it says a lot about you if you say lesbians on the moon. That sounds like porno. Like the only time you think of lesbians is on Pornhub. It says a lot about you.
And quick question: who is casting the movie then in their heads? Shapiro or the libs?
Yeah.
Who's the only one who mentioned lesbian porn here?
Yes.
My man.
Good point.
Might want to chill with that.
Honestly, to me, it sounds more like a 50s, 60s, like mainstream sci-fi movie. To be quite
like
frank.
a B movie or like
like Plan 9 from Outer Space or something like that.
a Roger Corman or Ed Wood film, lesbians in space.
It's also just
and of course, in that movie, they would be badass. Like they would be like the ones running the show. Yeah.
I was
Go
gonna say,
ahead,
it's also
Brandon.
surprising because we just know that, the right wing doesn't care about funding NASA, much less about who we send into space. Trump was slashing NASA's budget to, I guess, allocated towards the Space Force or some shit. So it's like, it's rich that someone who supported Trump could be like, well, I just care about NASA programs having the best quality equipment and personnel. It's like, well, they won't be able to afford it with the kind of budget that you were trying to give them. So it can't possibly be a real concern of yours. But this is about the aspirational quality of being an astronaut and who should be allowed to aspire to that and who shouldn't be allowed to aspire to that.
Yeah.
Like being president, one of the biggest concerns that like right wingers have with Obama being president was this kind of, and I would say overblown concern that it was going to allow for just a measure of our population to aspire to better and just not be in the grips of like deprivation, and also allow people like Ben Shapiro to pretend like they could one day be astronauts, or like to allow other, let's say, be honest, like grown ass Tom Cruise aged men to pretend like they're gonna one day still be fighter pilots. That's just a big portion of our, culture, is like Bruce Willis and I can't remember, Matt Damon blowing up asteroids in space. And if that were like a lesbian, that movie wouldn't be as impactful to me personally. And so I don't want to think about astronauts being anything other than like Buzz Aldrin type figures. And it's like, it's very
It's the
childish.
same reason they mock.
Thing.
It's the same reason they mock, by the way, trans people or gay people being in the military, because like that threatens their wish fulfillment and cosplay of like the kind of fantasy that they would want to engage in.
But it's interesting too that Blake Masters had the same point in that video we watched in the first half about how like, I don't care if everyone at the Fed is a black lesbian as long as they're qualified, or like with Shapiro basically kind of inverting it a tiny bit, being like, that's the only reason you want them in space, not because they're great astronauts. It's all, I mean, the underpinning there is basically, it needs to be a pure, like you said, meritocratic process. But if they are gay, or if they are black, or if they are another race, it's probably affirmative action.
That's what it is, right? It's a way to undercut non-white straight, or if you're not a straight white male, you probably got there from affirmative action.
Also,
I just don't even.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's just weird to think about what they conceptualize as an astronaut, because they're clearly just thinking like the Air Force people. But most astronauts are probably just like nerdy scientists.
Yes,
like most people who like are going into space are just like, geologists who are studying moon rocks. They're like, they're just not like, again, like they're just not just like the random like thick-necked like white guy you would cast to be like Jack Reacher or something. They're just like nerds.
It's a fascist view of like who belongs in space, right? Like it needs to be like the Ubermensch, and like it's like you see football players up there and stuff like that, instead of people who have gone through like and have like very high educational attainment, which by the way is something that is stratified along race and class and gender lines.
Iron Sky is a documentary, and for those of you who don't know.
Well, we just saw a whole culture war outrage from the right just a few months ago about a space movie with a lesbian in it, and that was Lightyear.
Oh my God, yeah.
And if you actually watch that movie, the character who is a lesbian is like Buzz Lightyear's partner in the movie, and she's more talented than him at like space adventuring. And the only thing that gives away that she's a lesbian is she shares a quick peck with another woman in space in their like space town they live in, and they went nuts over that. How dare they portray this in a movie in space?
Clowns.
Speaking of that, we can do some IMs or something, but we have that guy who freaked out about the class.
Which one?
There's a guy who freaked out about a rainbow heart in a classroom.
Okay, we'll play that. Let me just read some IMs while we're pulling that up. The Owl. By Ben's own logic, wouldn't it be a greater accomplishment to send average unqualified people to space safely?
That's the thing is like space. Like I understand certain sort of like physical and technical competencies are required. I think those sorts of things, like if you frame them as only a small section of the bell curve can ever get to that level of attainment, is ridiculous. Like we should just educate more people broadly.
Yeah.
And we'll have more astronauts and more people competent to be astronauts.
Fruity Dinosaur says Shapiro doing the side look to his producer looks so shameful. Like, oh no, I just admitted to watching porn.
Very specific porn too.
I know. Okay, so this is this person, Sean McBrearty, who identifies as a advocate for students and teachers.
Yeah, I can put
that's
this
suspicious.
up, Bradley. So this is Sean McBrearty, and I'll put this up. Sorry, not Bradley. Go up to his profile pic there so we can see him, the sunglasses and the American flag emoji. Now this looks like a sort of normal right-wing hysterical freak, advocate for students, parents, and blah, blah, blah. Ellsworth, Maine Kindergarten Open House provides parents a look at the indoctrination their kids are facing by teacher Rhonda Ulichny. Her class, remember naming the teachers explicitly here. Her class is not a family. It's not about being kind. It's about colors and ABCs. Parents are the family. Pull your kids now. And if you look up, he has some arrows directed at both some hearts that are rainbow colored.
What?
And if you look very closely,
it's a graphic that says class is a family.
Class is a family. And this is all about indoctrination. Now, we all know that that's some sort of like lunatic hysteric, right? That just happened to go to parent-teacher conferences. We also might not know is this guy is a Tucker Carlson guest. I think we should just watch some of. He put this little sizzle reel together for himself, and let's just look at some of the interviews here.
Wokeism fighter
in Maine told a father
He's got a red
Sean
flag
McBrearty
factory.
that he was not allowed to go to his daughter's graduation.
Okay, sorry, pause it 1 second.
Why?
He's not allowed. He wasn't allowed to go to his daughter's graduation because of like being an asshole. I think is basically yeah.
What? Because if there was a rainbow flag,
Like a Martin Luther King quote, he would have like thrown a folding chair.
but not even a rainbow flag, just like a colorful piece of artwork that might resemble a rainbow, which also the gays like.
Which, by the way, like is just the like sort of pattern or color scheme you do when you want to use all of the crayons in the box or all the markers in the box.
I just absolutely love this YouTube video. So it's from November of last year of his sizzle reel. It's essentially as if he was like a character actor in like Blue Bloods or something, being like, here's me as a hot dog vendor in Law and Order SVU. But instead he's like CRT and wokeism fighter.
The rainbow fish? We all know what that means.
I love the idea of like someone getting freaked out about like going to a classroom and seeing like the color wheel on the wall. Like they just think that gradients in general is like a LGBTQ indoctrination thing. Like how do you shop?
Yeah,
Like,
Roy G. Biv, that's for the gays.
G is for gay.
That's grooming.
That's they added so many letters to LGBTQ. Can't keep up anymore. Now it's just Roy G. Biv. It's crazy. How do you go shopping at like a paint store if you're just like triggered by like colors changing?
secondary colors. That's for the trans.
I love
folk.
colors. I'm big into colors. I used to love having those big box of crayons. I didn't realize that it was gonna like trigger somebody's anxiety about like, the LGBTQ agenda.
Yeah, talk about a snowflake. All right, let's watch this guy's sizzle reel.
Police in Maine told a father called Sean McBriarty that he was not allowed to go to his daughter's graduation ceremony. Why? He'd been banned by the school district from all school events. Why was he banned? Because he fought back against what the school
So
was
just
teaching.
pause it 1 second. I'll just a little bit more detail. So he ultimately was able to attend the graduation. The thing was, he had a criminal trespass order against going to the schools. Potter said the order was issued after McBriarty repeatedly violated district rules and after multiple warnings about padlocking a sign to a school fence. Potter also said that McBriarty had disrupted several school board meetings, had distributed flyers on the desk of Greeley students without permission. It was a series of things. So this guy's just a pest at school.
Or
I
how
don't think this is
embarrassed do you
psycho.
think his daughter is of him? Like how? Oh my God, my dad again.
Please don't let him come to the graduation.
I can't see any good coming from platforming this guy on your show, regardless of where your ideology leans, because this guy is like a pile of red flags on fire. And that's not to make like that's just like an agnostic judgment about the way he refers to himself and what people say about him.
Right.
Why was he banned? Because he fought back against what the school was teaching, racist propaganda, the equity agenda. We've seen it across the country. It's evil. And very few parents have said anything.
Evil.
But Sean McBriarty did.
Fucking
There have
ask
been
about that,
reports that
Glenn.
The school board may have reversed its decision. Sean McBriarty is here to give us an update. He is a parent, as we said. He's the main chapter head of the group No Left Turn in Education, which fights this nonsense. Sean, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. for
So
inviting me.
just to the news part right at the top, has the school board reversed its decision? Can you go?
On facial
So,
hair
as far as I
alone.
know right now, I can't go to the band concert on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
There was some word salad that the superintendent sent me, which essentially said if I met some conditions, he might let me go to graduation.
To your own daughter's graduation.
Yeah. And I have twin senior daughters. And but right now it's
Lucky
still a
girls.
little up in the air. I pushed back a couple times on that because frankly, I don't think there should be conditions set to me going to graduation. I don't know if he wants me to stand on one leg and rub my belly the whole time. I have no idea what these conditions are.
Well, I suspect you won't.
Can you pause it?
Yeah,
So maybe the conditions might have to do with, I don't know, some of the protective orders filed against you. Like, there are some conditions for certain adults not being allowed to attend a graduation. Say, like if they are not allowed within certain feet of a schoolyard.
Yeah, if they continue trespassing onto school property and doing things that is not allowed.
And distributing
also there's-
anti-CRT lit to classrooms as if he's like an evangelist, like on school grounds, like
not allowed.
There are basic conditions that everyone needs to abide by to attend a graduation. For example, would Tucker have this guy on if he was just refusing to wear pants to this graduation? Like,
he stood up to the woke mob who wanted him to go with clothes from the torso down.
I also just think that the name of his organization, like No Left Turn, is a pretty bad idea because it's just going to give you like Zoolander results if you search for it, which is what I was doing. So like
the
change that.
Brandon, you're on fire today. All right, keep going.
Yeah, let's watch a little bit more.
So now we have the reel with him and Harris Faulkner.
Oh wow, they like the Fox News booker is a hard on for this guy.
And also, I absolutely love the background. We got the suit and the Blue Lives Matter flag.
We know.
Also,
we know.
does Tucker usually
how?
Does Tucker usually say when he announces somebody that I wasn't the pause was so long I thought you had paused it. Does Tucker usually when he introduces a guest say like this is a person called insert name here? Like that was a really weird. No one says like, oh, you're called John. It's like, oh, my guest today is that's the name right there. It was very
Tucker,
weird intro.
Yeah, he always has like some weird kind of like dialogue quirks, I'd say.
I feel like he probably introduced like Cameron as Cameron. Was that Tucker Carlson?
No, that was O'Reilly.
Oh yeah, it's all it could be his rap name.
And so you fought back how?
I sent a letter, an email to Jeff Porter, the superintendent, really saying, hey, look, you missed an opportunity on First Amendment peaceful protests. This is in the midst of Minneapolis burning to the ground. Also, I said you could have mentioned our police department. We are the safest town in Maine. It's in the annual report, and our guys are great. I mean, we have had a top-notch police department until recently, where effectively the equity committee has defunded our Cumberland Police Department, not through dollars, because we pay a lot of taxes here, but for personnel. We've had a number of folks quit. They're giving their notice quitting or have already left or are leaving, and about half the force is now gone, which makes us all less safe than we were a year ago.
District, I think,
Sorry,
sent
pause
the community.
and skip that guy. The idea that they started diversity requirements with regards to cops, and then a whole bunch of cops started resigning, is a red
Dubious?
flag. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the claim, in my opinion, is dubious, but I like, we'll see.
Right. And then just one more with him on Ingram here, because I like what he says about trying to get people fired, as he tried to get that teacher fired for having a thing that says the class is a family.
This is the Barry Weiss logic loop.
It's a difficult situation, to say the least.
Kelsey Stoyanova, named 2022 Teacher of the Year by the Maine Department of Education, released a reading list that included a book called Middle School's a Drag, and it concerns an enterprising boy who starts his own junior talent agency and signs a 13-year-old aspiring drag queen as his first client. Sean, how pervasive is that in our schools?
Not very.
It's very factual. I mean, I spent a lot of time on this, what I would call a woke book list, and really did my homework to get an F for this particular book list. Her book list is full of anti-father, transgender, LGBTQ, critical race theory books, and sexual education. And frankly, it's just sickening.
Oh,
they put
wow.
his Venmo up at the end.
Anyone wants to send him some money? Man, like, I just want people to know that drag shows are not inherently sexual. There are adult drag shows, and there's stuff that's more family friendly. It's just colorful costumes and fun. That's why kids, honestly, I know somebody whose kid loves RuPaul's Drag Race. That's why they're drawn to it, because it's fun dancing.
No, it should be illegal to be gay or do any kind of gender play or sort of that sort of stuff until you're 18, and every parent who allows their kid that sort of freedom should be thrown in prison.
Did Sean show his kids Mrs. Doubtfire at one point? Because then lock him up.
Big Mama's House. I'm in jail
Big
for
Mama's House,
loving
1 and 2.
Big Mama's House.
White chicks.
I love the idea of him like.
Go ahead, Brendan.
I love the idea of him just walking into the classroom with like a huge like stack of manga, like just like this is the entire series of like Ranma 1/2, and he's just like, this book is sick. A girl turns into a boy in this, and a boy turns into a girl. Like,
my woke list.
The Japanese have gone too far.
Men will literally assemble a woke book list instead of going to therapy.
All right.
I mean, hysterical freaks. That's what these are. I mean, just put that picture back up one more time, just so we can see what he's freaking out about. Yeah, there. Look at that. It's rainbows, and look at that indoctrination.
I mean, it's so clear what they're trying to do.
I mean,
there.
you might as well put like a candid picture of a Freddie Mercury party up on the wall.
we put the kind in kindergarten. I'm quaking. I'm appalled.
Horror. It's just the fact about our society that like our school systems are not quite good enough where we can allow parents who have been filtered through them to pretend as though that makes them pedagogical experts, because like, you know, kids just have to know their colors. You know, these are just things that kindergartners like need in their classroom to like teach them how to engage with the world. And, you know, the fact that just a bunch of parents now who have read too many Facebook, Twitter threads, you know, et cetera, doesn't quite give them the ability to have a meaningful like say about what kids need to be taught, even if they're their kids. You know, frankly, even like homeschooling has a curriculum that you have to follow at a certain point to like qualify for, you know, certain types of achievement levels.
Yeah, I mean, this is just this guy doing what Charlie Kirk did with the Time magazine.
I know, that's what is just killing me about this. So many investigators.
Also, his Twitter avatar is literally the same Twitter avatar as seen in the conservative replies on social media meme. Like, click the link that I dropped in the chat. Do you know what I'm talking about? This meme of all these, middle-aged men and older wearing sunglasses in their avatar
Oh
photos
yes,
on
yes,
social media.
yes.
Yes.
Every person who I've used that meme. Every person who says Odell Beckham Jr. Needs to be a little less flashy, a little more quiet. These guys, yeah.
I think he's in this photo. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
All the
You
guys
have to
who
stare at
says
it for 30 minutes to find out which one he is.
all the people who said Lamar Jackson should play wide receiver.
Rex Jackson's a running back. Yeah.
That's just what you call a patriot collage.
Yeah.
Real American
Amazing.
voices right there.
Patriots / black quarterback critics.
And fishing enthusiasts, mostly,
Yeah.
I think.
All right, let's take another call here. Calling from a 786 area code. I believe you IM'd in. Wait, did I? Oh wait, I tried to pick up here. Hello.
Hello?
Hi. Are you there?
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm. There's something up. It's not showing that I picked up, but I guess I did. So okay. Who's this? Where are you
Great.
calling from?
This is Dr. Gus calling from Florida.
This is who calling from Florida?
Dr. Gus.
Dr. Gus.
Dr. Gus from Florida. What's on your mind?
I was just calling to talk a little bit about the interview, or just the topic of the interview.
Okay.
Just to give a little bit of background on myself. I'm a DACA recipient. I've been kind of undocumented on and off for the last 20 years that I lived here. And I'm also a veterinarian. So I worked a lot around around dairy farms in Florida and a little bit in California. And something that I see, that I see in all these farms are the workers there. All the exploitation, everything we know about. The people that are moving back to their countries, they're not really moving. They're basically fleeing persecution. What makes them want to leave these places is because they're undocumented. They don't have driver's licenses. They cannot drive around in the area. They cannot go to a supermarket and be safe. They can get pulled over by a cop for broken taillight, and that leads to deportation. At least in Florida, for example, a cop can arrest you for not having a license, and then in some counties they have the obligation to call ICE. So, for example, back in 2008, I think, around Bell, Florida, there was the farm's still there, dairy farm's still there. It's called Alliance Dairy Farms. Everyone there is undocumented, obviously, all the workers there, and they had a manager that was fired for whatever reasons, and they got mad and called ICE on the farm. So ICE did a raid about a week later, and the farm it couldn't shut down because the cows would die. So what happened was, all the workers got taken by ICE, many of them deported. The owners of the farm, which were never there, a lot of the owners of those farms don't really work the farms. They have a manager, or they have a few supervisors that are often undocumented themselves that do most of the work. So the owners had to actually come back and work on the farm for once. It was a disaster. I was around there because I was in the university then, and the University of Florida works with them and helps them. So yeah, it was a disaster watching the actual owners work the farm for a few days.
Yeah.
But so what this leads to, the owner kind of, so they do create some kind of personal relationship with the workers, but it's mediated only by production, right? They don't really care about these workers. What I see a lot is often the owners will develop relationships with the manager, and the manager is usually an undocumented person. Very often they're white passing, which that's a whole another thing. And they do create relationships with the family of this worker. This manager usually ends up getting papers somehow. But in the meantime, there are hundreds and hundreds of undocumented workers, quote unquote, unskilled workers that come and go. They come, they get deported, and all you hear from the owners are just demeaning, racist things about these workers that don't know how to work, don't want to learn.
Yeah.
So there's no real relationship there, and there's no like good nostalgic feeling of brotherhood between these owners and these workers. It's just
yes.
I guess the owners will feel not as bad as about what they do by seeing it this way. You know.
I agree. We're gonna have to probably let you go in a sec because your phone's crackling a little bit. But I found that emphasis to be a bit overly rosy. This what you're describing to me seems like much more of the norm. Oh, did we let? Did he? Did he hang
So
up?
you just cut off for a second, but well, I appreciate you taking my call, and yeah. So it's been at least 30 years of the system, and nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Farms will close down, small farms, big farms. It's still all the same. Nothing will change until there's some kind of immigration reform.
100%.
And the biggest thing that allows these people to continue the system the way it is that the workers are not allowed to go visit their families and come back. They're stuck here. They don't want to be stuck here. They don't want to live here forever. We need some kind of immigration reform.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Dr. Gus. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I mean, very confirms a lot of the things, including like the role that ICE plays in enforcing labor discipline.
Yeah, and I think that's part of this question too. Like, it's easy for some people to, try to forget that the general labor market is exploitative, and so that like attaching people's livelihood to labor and having jobs seems easier to do when you. Well, that's just how it works here. It's like, but there's an extra layer of when you're an undocumented immigrant here that like creates an extra layer of danger where we might just fall into poverty, an extreme poverty in this country, but they might be, there's a lot more danger in being undocumented and having that happen to you.
Leach writes in, I'm so freaking tired of these right-wingers claiming Minneapolis is burning to the ground. I live here, and it's a beautiful city. It's just a racist dog whistle at this point. Also, most of the fires were started by white kids from the suburbs who drove in to cause chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, thanks for that, because I think it is the sort of mythologizing of the George Floyd protests, particularly, like, that's becoming a right-wing reactionary like sort of test or article of faith that like what happened was basically a conspiracy against Donald Trump by the Democrats to cause riots across America, when the truth is that those protests, and like the other caller said, like a lot of things were instigated, and there's also some actual anger which is what happens when cops kill people, but broadly speaking was like one of the largest peaceful protests like
in history.
Moments in history.
Yeah, people who describe Minneapolis as burning will not only now describe like when Philly's burning after every Eagles championship as just like people having a good time, but they'll also describe an event where more cops died just flagrantly, like January 6th, as just like a peaceful protest. And now that we have these like comparisons, there's they have to sort of like do a different sleight of hand. Like, then are you supporting the criminal justice system? It's like, no. Where do we just know where what they mean by like Mississippi, Minneapolis is burning. They know like it's racially charged way of saying that like black people are getting uppity there.
Yep. Andrew from Denver Metro, who called earlier, says apologies for the downer call, but maybe if Mandela wins, he can advocate for ending ICE cooperation with local law enforcement and make a better path forward for citizenship for workers. Yes. Chris Burdick. Shapiro's like, I don't care if an astronaut's a black lesbian as long as they're qualified and not black or a lesbian. Yeah. Anita Bryant's cream pie. Wait. Banana cream pie. Anyway. Lesbians over the moon, the horror. Lesbians on the moon, the horror. Shapiro and Crowder are united in this weird obsession with queer women. I'm convinced Crowder's paper-thin masculinity is threatened by lesbians, but Shapiro, he's terrified of that WAP. Owl by Ben. Oh, I read this already. Chris Burdick. Trump grabbed everything labeled top secret because he thought that knowing all the secrets of tops would make him a more effective power bottom. Okay. Lots of blue IMs today. Papa Woody.
Oh, they're a little raunchy. Well, let's go to Papa Woody.
I just I gotta probably
Even-headed Papa Woody.
My brain needs to work faster so I can read these before I say them out loud. But anyway, Agricultural Workers United, affiliated with the Machinists and Aerospace Workers Union, has successfully unionized their first office, Bernheimer Agriculture in Brooklyn. It certainly helped that Andrew Bernheimer, a well-respected architect across the U.S., has been supportive of the movement since inception. Hope to see more movement by AWU in the industry now that the first domino has fallen. Yes. Right or Wrong says, I wish these pro-immigrant folks would stop saying immigrants are doing jobs that we don't want to do. That's BS. It's the owners who won't even offer these jobs to workers because they know they can get away with paying less than minimum wage. I guarantee you could get 25 people in my neighborhood in 10 minutes to do the same work, but these owners know they couldn't get away with skirting labor laws, so you get high unemployment in underserved neighborhoods, and immigrants get blamed for stealing jobs. We should be looking at the business owners. Well said. Well said. That's exactly the point, in my opinion. Let's do this Dave Rubin clip because I was sad we didn't get to it yesterday. This is an older clip of Dave Rubin on a panel, but Dave Clip's great account has resurfaced it, and it's one of my favorites because Rubin's on this panel discussing the gay community and its place in politics. And he's at a conservative conference here. It's the National Conservatism Conference. And the panelists and the audience are just like completely not on board with what he's trying to say here and parse. So he does it multiple times when he's speaking here. He throws in homophobic stereotypes and jabs, and that's the only time that the audience responds. Just take a look at this, because this clip encapsulates, in my opinion, his entire professional existence. We lost Binder, but he'll be back shortly. Let's play this clip.
I know plenty of gay people that are horrified at what is coming out of the gay community now. I mean, truly horrified, because in many ways it's setting back a tremendous amount of progress. The progress of equality, the progress of, okay, you can enter the same contract that a heterosexual couple can, and now you can hopefully live a life that...
So this is step one of this, right? Where he is, good, we have you back, Binder. This is where he is blaming the way that gay people act, the culture of gay people. He's saying that is the reason why conservatives can't accept them, which is honestly, I mean, like, he is serving the same function that, say, Candace Owens serves, where she blames, like, where are the fathers? What's wrong with black culture? Like,
Bill Cosby, pull your pants up.
Yeah, it is. This is a fundamentally conservative argument about, like, we can't accept you because of the way that you are, and it's your fault for being the way that you are. And Dave Rubin is a gay person saying this to conservative people. That's the value that he provides for them. But sometimes it's difficult for them to get out of their hateful mindset to even accept him. Like, even though he is serving that function for him, they will never fully accept him because of their bigotry. And he serves bigotry to them on a silver platter with his rhetoric about this. It's despicable, but continue.
I know plenty of gay people that are horrified at what is coming out of the gay community now. I mean, truly horrified, because in many ways it's setting back a tremendous amount of progress. The progress of equality, the progress of, okay, you can enter the same contract that a heterosexual couple can, and now you can hopefully live a life that is sustaining. You know, it's ironic because there's a huge conservative argument, I think, actually, for gay marriage. I lived in West Hollywood in LA. It's sort of the gayest place on earth. I mean, the crosswalks are rainbow. It's too much.
Okay,
frankly.
pause it there. See, this So you hear that guy laughing hysterically, one of the panelists. Notice this, and I just, it really is gross. I know he's funny, but he's a disgusting person. Like, he is trying to get the audience in the National Conservative Conference to warm up to the concept of gay marriage. Now, does he do this for any other groups? No, he does this because, you know, he's a member of the gay community and he wants his bread to continue to be buttered by his conservative audience. So he's trying incredibly tepidly to get them to be a little less bigoted. But the only way he feels comfortable approaching that argument to this audience is to immediately say it's too much. It's so gross, right? Go into a gay stereotype mode and using that. And of course, that's the one reaction he gets from this panelist guy who starts laughing hysterically. But just notice that this is his tick, because it is really like you're watching the psychology of this man play out in real time. Keep going.
Actual couple can, and now you can hopefully live a life that is sustaining. You know, it's ironic because there's a huge conservative argument, I think, actually, for gay marriage. I lived in West Hollywood in LA. It's sort of the gayest place on earth. I mean, the crosswalks are rainbow. It's too much, frankly. But there's nothing sadder to me than when you see, you know, this a 70-year-old guy that's spray tanned and fake hair. It sounds like Trump, but that's not what I mean. You know, that works out all day and carries his little dog and has nothing to live for other than that, and maybe being on the hunt still because he couldn't engage, because 50 years ago the world was very hostile to him and couldn't then get in a relationship that would be the thing that conservatives would want, even if it wasn't exactly the relationship that conservatives would want. So I actually don't want those things taught. I think that Douglas could probably explain this a lot better. I mean, the T thing is completely...
Pause it. What things taught? I'm sorry. What things taught? That a man is like, has a tan and has a dog that he carries around? What things taught? Can you guys unpack that mystery for me? What is he talking about? As opposed to like, I want all gay people to be a little less brazen about being gay and not get a spray tan and have a dog that's big and masculine.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break, dude.
I mean, given that he says Douglas, I'm assuming he's talking about Douglas Murray, who is himself a gay sort of like genocide apologist.
I did not know he was gay.
Yeah, I know. He doesn't go on about it like Dave Rubin does, but he is. And what he means is CRT and LGBT acceptance stuff in schools, because that's Douglas Murray's beat.
Anyway, just you guys. I've been dominating, so you guys weigh in if you'd like.
Oh, is there no more clip? Because he just keeps going on with these, like, you know.
No, there's more. There's more.
Oh, yeah, let's keep escalating. Let's finish it out.
Let's keep going.
Wasn't exactly the relationship that conservatives would want. So I actually don't want those things taught. I think that Douglas could probably explain this a lot better. I mean, the T thing has completely just dysregulated the entire conversation here. But I think in many cases, it's like we have to be able to separate. When you're talking about that carve out, we have to have that carve out. I would say I would be a little worried. I'm still a little worried. Yeah.
Of course you're worried, because what I'm asking you to do is to be willing to consider. I mean, it's like in a dialogue, in a negotiation, but to be willing to consider something other than the maximal dream scenario.
Yes, I fully accept that.
In order to give the Christian majority the possibility of running a Christian society in Christian areas, right? That's
not only do I accept that, I will be very clear. I would strongly prefer that public schools teach the Old Testament and the New Testament rather than drag queen story hour. So,
wait. First of all, I can confirm that public schools aren't teaching drag queen story hour. That's a completely voluntary thing parents take their kids to at libraries. Like libraries that anyone can go to, not school libraries, like public libraries.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Binder, like I think the New York school district has had, with parental permission, drag queens come in and read to classes before.
Horror. I didn't know, but yeah,
and then you see this. Yeah, I know exactly. It's like, and parents agree to that, right? Like, I mean, who cares?
But also, that's very specific. That's like the exception, right? Most of these drag queen story hours that the right goes over the top about are completely voluntary events, mostly taking place on like weekends or after school hours that parents take their kids to because the parents choose to do that, and they're part of that whole experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's it's a little hard to watch. I like most Dave Rubin stand-up specials. It's a little hard to watch, but it's just he's very desperate, kind of like Candace Owens, kind of like Laura Loomer. Maybe Ben Shapiro too, to be like one of the good ones for a crowd of bigots. And he shifts to this idea that what's keeping gay people, standing for Black people, standing for Jewish people from like being accepted and integrated into the conservative sphere is that they have these sort of behavioral and cultural traditions that are distinct from like real Americans. And that is what they're reacting to. I think towards the end there, when he was saying like the T thing, he was referring to trans people, like, adding the T to LGBTQ, like makes it a sort of separate issue, like a lot of transphobes do. But what I don't think, maybe he does understand this and he's just comfortable with like still saying it. But I don't think what like people who fall into the trap of like repeating those things earnestly understand is like that's just a lie. Like when people refer to like the culture and behavior of like Black people or Jewish people or women or gay people and give that like the why people hate them, it's just a stand-in for like the old arguments about like race being genetic, sexuality being defined by like people's like moral or intellectual failure. And these are just coded terms that like they don't believe in the crowd. If you believe them, you've been tricked, and you've been tricked into believing that there's some sort of core of Republican or far right mentality that is based in like behavior and freedom, but it's not. They're bigots. Like the thing that keeps you from being quote unquote one of the good ones in their eyes is that you're gay. Not that you like rainbows, not that you like, not that you that you like to kiss your boyfriend, but like the rainbow thing is a sign that you're gay, and they don't like the gay thing, not they don't like the rainbow. Like I guess that's just silly. Like if you fall for that trap, it's because like you're as childish as they are. But like no, like they don't like Black people because they're like Black. The fact that like they're the Black culture is like just a coded term that they use for like Black people.
And Dave is to your point, Brandon, you're exactly right. Like Dave is alluding to something I think Douglas Murray said earlier in the clip where he's saying, or one of his ideological pillars, which is like you can take the T out and use the trans idea or trans issue as something completely separate from cis gay issues, basically.
But
I think Ruben is basically saying I'm okay with that. I'm actually fine with that carve out as long as we keep some semblance of like civil union education or like gay education in the curriculum, to be like if that old guy had the option to marry, he wouldn't be cruising the streets of West Hollywood looking
like a
for
degenerate,
a degenerate,
right? And that's the thing is like this is a bit of an older clip, right? Before I think Ruben announced to his audience that he was having children with his partner via surrogate, and this is just a glimmer into like how he was beginning to distance himself from trans people, because now that transphobia has exploded, it was always around, but it's become kind of like an operating principle for the right now. Ruben is more than willing to demonize and throw trans people under the bus or people who dress in drag, because it's like the way for him to continue to keep the gravy train rolling and to seek water in the desert, aka acceptance for being gay within the conservative movement, as a way to like, one, I think just, justify the fact that he's continuing to go down this road, but also to keep himself employed in this way. These are the bedfellows that he has now, and he's reaping what he sowed.
I want to say, I wouldn't normally do this, but Mayor Eric Adams in a statement admonished the councilwoman for her comments. The councilwoman called this drag time story hours grooming. And Adams, at a time when our LGBTQ plus communities are under increased attack across this country, we must use our education system to educate, the mayor said. The goal is not only for our children to be academically smart, but also emotionally intelligent dreg storytellers in the libraries and schools that support them are advancing a love of diversity, personal expression, and literacy that is core to what our city embraces. Thank you, Mayor Adams.
That happened to be Joanne Areola, the council
Palladino,
member?
I think.
Or Palladino.
Vicky Palladino.
Oh, Vicky. Oh, yeah.
Can I guess that she represents Staten Island?
She's a queen. She's a Queens.
Oh,
like
Queens.
a deep Queens. I'm just curious from my past work. In Queens for the
Gotcha.
city, whether
Yeah.
I-
Bradley used to work for the city.
I did. Yeah.
Yes, he did.
I'm
Anyway.
very
Yeah, I
familiar
mean,
with
like,
her. Yes, she is right here, nearby, right next door. Yes.
Yeah, like the New York City public school system is like a multi-billion-dollar institution that is like you can basically run like a business. They're not going to be like, pressured by YouTubers into making it more dangerous and less profitable for them to do what they do. So, I think that's like a big part of the Eric Adams pushback. There are a lot of, I hate to say it, it's just like a calculation. There are a lot of LGBTQ donors in New York City. Maybe probably just like Nancy Pelosi's district. That's not the kind of play that's going to work in our in our New York City, and it basically won't even work in Staten Island because
sorry. No. I just want to say, to add to your point, that's part of why he was saying don't say gay bill, Floridians come back here. But all right, guys, we're probably, I think we had a tight and good show, so I think that's going to be the final no more calls, and we're going to read some IMs. We're going to get out of here. Sorry, folks, if you were on the line. But J-Man Raps, hey, I'm wondering if you're going to do a House of the Dragon review. Left is best. I mean, am I formally going to do one? No, but I will say, I'll give you my thoughts really quickly. I was really nervous to watch because maybe this sounds dorky, but I was heartbroken about the way the Game of Thrones ended, and not just the final season. I think you begin to see a dip as soon as the source material runs out in season 5, and it was on a slow decline through season 6. And I know people like Battle of the Bastards because of the production value, but in terms of the logical story elements, there was a lot to be desired, including Sansa holding that information for forever and whatever. But it kept getting worse. I mean, and also other things involving Sansa, like them changing the book to have her get raped as opposed to Jane, which was passing as Sansa, which made way more sense for the story. Regardless, those guys are idiots, Benioff and Weiss, and I was happy that they weren't involved, but I was nervous to get emotionally invested. It looks really good. It's really good so far. Matt Smith is
he's really
I think
good.
great as Daemon, and I'm pumped. I hope that they continue to. It seems like they've really jumped right into the story. A lot's happened in the first 2 episodes. I almost wish that they would slow walk it a little more, but I'm pretty excited about House of the Dragon. I don't know about everybody else.
There's not as many characters though as in Game of Thrones, even from the very beginning. That's the first thing I noticed. Whereas Game of Thrones from episode 1, season 1, you were already establishing 10 different locations with 10 different families in that location.
Yeah.
This it's we're just following the Targaryens and the main, I would say, 2 or 3 characters right now, if you want to count the king. I think he's more of a background supporting role though.
And the High Towers as well. So, and it seems like they're setting up some Baratheon involvement. I'm a dork, I understand this, but I'm excited. I was nervous, but yeah.
I will say it's not hitting as good as it could have due to that final season of Game of Thrones, specifically because they've already made reference to the long night, the winter's coming thing that's going to happen in 150 years from when the show's taking place. And they're already building it up as a huge thing, which we've already seen. And it was a big disappointment because it was that final season.
I never made it past the 2nd season of the first Game of Thrones because I found the whole thing to be kind of confusing. But I will say House of Dragons, I don't think I could watch because the silver wigs that they have look real bad. It would be really distracting, and I don't know what to really put that on because it seems like they have money to burn on this, but do better.
Yeah,
I was in the same position
early
as you,
Xena
Philip.
level wig.
I was in the same position as you for the first season of the first, Game of Thrones, where it took me like 3 seasons to really I was forced to watch it because someone else was watching it in my
Indoctrination.
household, and I was just there, sitting there. But then by like season 3, I was like, oh man, this is actually really good. It takes you a while to get all the characters, which does not happen in this. Like, there's not that many characters, so you know who's who right away.
Seasons 3 and 4 are arguably the greatest 2 seasons of television ever. That's how I feel.
I love them. They're so good. Yeah.
I think that should be a tagline for Game of Thrones. There should be Game of Thrones. You'll get used to it.
Yeah.
Right. That way, that way people know that you'll get used to it.
It's interesting that this is coming out with the Lord of the Rings show too,
which I hear bad things about.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's either going to be good for both of them, that both groups of fans want to watch both, or if one will kind of like absorb the other. I can't tell.
I've heard good things about the Lord of the Rings ones. I might watch that one, not the Game of Thrones one. I've seen Lord of the Rings a bunch of times.
I love those.
Lord of the Rings guy. Yeah.
Included the extended edition versions. My mother really likes those. And although really the extended edition version is just like, they just add like an hour and a half more conversations. 45 minutes of those conversations are like Merry and Pippin talking about smoking weed. So
Yes.
Like,
They're not worth it, except there is one good scene with Saruman, but where they show his death. That was in the extended edition.
Spoiler alert. Thanks a lot.
No,
sorry.
The best part is when Merry and Pippin get high with the trees, the Ents, after the assault on Helm's Deep, the assault on Saruman's place. And they're like, should we share it with the trees? Like, they would find it to be a little bit probably problematic. And I was like, not good allies.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Didn't this Lord of the Rings series cost Amazon like
$200
$500 million or
something like that? Yeah.
That's a lot, and it makes me wish that maybe Amazon did Game of Thrones, because then there would have been all those budget cuts. That was unbelievable that they were cutting the budget of their most popular series of all time.
You see it in the wigs. Galadriel does not. Her hair does not look like that.
Okay, so those are my thoughts. Anyway, our thoughts as well. Can't stand the goatee slander, says Salsa Dipped Cracker. I'm sorry, I'm not a big fan of goatees. J Tide, get it, Emma. You work the shit out of the Hello Tushy ad. Okay, thank you. The distinguished genteel man, meritocracy, Uber Alice for the Space Force. What's Uber Alice?
What does Uber Alice mean? I forget. It's German. Super something.
Above everything else, basically.
Congressional baseball fan, Rob Schneider's ideas about World War II flyers are total bullshit. There's an assumption of American military competency, but this is largely based on the mythology of World War II, not based in reality. The concept of precision military airstrikes with acceptable collateral damage has always been inaccurate at best, and in most cases just an outright lie. During World War II, a formation of 1,000 B-7 bombers only had the accuracy of 16% of the total bombs dropped, hitting within 1,000 feet of the target. That was considered precision bombing. Many targets, like factories, were bombed repeatedly for weeks without ever being destroyed. With the level of inaccuracy, civilian deaths were already fairly high in 1943. But when the 8th Air Force switched to pattern bombing in 1944 and 1945, they killed a whole lot more civilians. If the Air Force were a baseball team, they'd be the Red Sox. They've done a pretty terrible job overall, but they get just enough wins to keep the fans believing.
Well, you know what? You don't kill 100% of the people you don't bomb, so you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, like there was a time where people remembered like the bombing of Dresden as like a crime, despite we were fighting the Nazis. And also, just another story, real quick, about pilots and like the way America puts them into wars. During Vietnam, there was they used a lot of helicopters. Those helicopters only had a certain amount of range to go into Vietnam, and the Vietnamese knew this, so they would create some problems, basically far enough away so the helicopter had to go straight there and straight back and couldn't alter their path, which meant that they knew exactly which path the helicopter were taking, so they could sit under that path with basically like these cable guns that would shoot cables up into the rotors of the helicopters and take them down. and a whole bunch of American pilots and people, helicopter, like Air Force, Army type folks, went down into the jungles because of exactly that happening. And Bell Helicopter and like American war elites knew that this was happening. But especially for Bell Helicopter, it just meant a new helicopter order came through, and that was money in the bank. So that's the lesson that I would counter about pilots in war.
I would also counter that I feel like there is a mass deficit of appreciation in the Western world, aka Britain and the United States, for the much larger sacrifice made by the USSR. And I feel like there's a mythologizing of what the United States did to a degree that is, like, frankly offensive, given how many people were lost on the Russian side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice in a perfect world where we just all remembered that communists and American democracy or whatever came together to fight fascism. But of course, we invited up a lot of like Nazi scientists and stuff to. Yeah.
Yes. All right, 5 more, and then we're gonna get out of here. Southern trolling. From what I've read, the 2020 protests' cost of damages for the entire summer nationally is either equal to or lesser than the damage caused during the LA riots after Rodney King, which lasted 2 months and were localized to LA County. With inflation, it amounts to roughly $1 billion for both events. Salt Lake Lefty. It's sad that Ruben is trying to pitch gay marriage in a semi-secret way to the conservatives, and they're like, nope, because Christianity. Ruben can't accept it.
He's become religious now.
Jared Jetland. We're whalers on the moon. We carry a harpoon, but there ain't no whales, so we tell tall tales and sing a whale tune. And the final IM of the day. Militant apathy. She let Donald Trump touch her, but she can't stand the thought of the FBI touching her underwear. Wait, what? Okay, that's not the final IM of the day. Yes. It's just
a horny posting or something.
I mean, I gotta say, it feels like sometimes people like are trying to get me to say inappropriate things for some titillation, and not my favorite thing.
That's enough.
And the final IM of the day. Sadie Stone. Speaking of Bell Helicopter, my granddad worked on Reagan's Air Force One. Bright side was he took some scrap metal, and now I have brass knuckles. All right. There you go. Appreciate it, guys. Great show. Lots of fun. Thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid.